Officer of Globethics.net India. Globethics.net is an international forum that is committed to ethics in higher education. Thank you for taking the time to join us today as we are here about a conferencing and a publication project with the overarching theme being towards sustainable knowledge and ethical societies, the contribution of higher education institutions. This is the second in the series and all about shaping the knowledge societies through higher education, which take place online today and tomorrow. It's great that we can all meet today to explore the knowledge societies globally and locally. This is a joint venture of Cebu Technological University, Cebu Province, Philippines, Christ deemed to be University, Delhi, NCR, India, and Globethics.net India based in Bangalore. Now I'm going to share the program for the day. First, we have the opening remarks of Reverend Father Jose Nandikara. He's the National Director of Globethics.net India. Then we are going to listen to the thematic talk by Monsignor Professor Dr. Obiora Ike, the Executive Director of Globethics.net Geneva, Switzerland. The keynote address will be delivered by Reverend Dr. Christoph Stuckelberger, the founder, president of Globethics.net. That will be followed by a talk by Dr. Meera Baindur, the Associate Professor at Orvi College, Bengaluru. We have Father Viju, the Director and Dean of Christ deemed to be University, Delhi NCR, and Dr. Pawan Dugal, the International Board Member of Globethics.net, for felicitating the special effort and the event. And we have Professor Dr. Julio Durant, the Academic Secretary at the University of Austral, Argentina, to share some of the highlights from the first conference that was led by Globethics.net Latin America and partners. We have two reactors today, Dr. Amale Ekwe, the Academic Dean of Globethics.net, and also we have Dr. Bejay Bolivar, working with Cebu Technological University from the Philippines. There will be 4 research paper presentations by Dr. Dennis P. Macon from the Philippines, Professor Benoit Girardin from Switzerland, James Coder from North Carolina, and Dr. Christie from the Philippines. Though we are now familiar with the Zoom, let me go through some housekeeping. We have enabled the chat box to source your questions and to ensure that you can interact with the organizers, speakers, and the paper presenters. Feel free to introduce yourself along with your name, designation, institution, and the country for us to know from where you are attending this global conference. Share your experiences and responses on the topics being covered. Put your questions in the Q&A box. We will address your questions by the end of each guest session. The moderators will collect the most appropriate questions so we can answer them for you. A recording of the conference will be made available and will be shared on request to you all. By the end of our time today, we hope you feel more comfortable and confident about shaping knowledge societies through higher education. We are very passionate about it, and we do have many exciting stories and learnings to share here today through our speakers and paper presenters. Now, without further ado, I will turn the time over to Father Jose Nandikara, the National Director of Globethics.net India. He is also the Editor-in-Chief of Journal of Dharma. It is Father Jose Nandikara's great wisdom, thought, and initiative that are behind this 3 conference series. This idea was born from him. Let us applaud him virtually as he takes over the webinar floor for his opening remarks. Hearty welcome, Father Jose Nandikara.
Thank you, Rajula, for the kind words of welcome to me and to all of you. Let me begin with a prayer for peace, with a particular intention of peace in Ukraine and Russia, other parts of the globe, we are living not in a sustainable societies, but as societies that are broken with different interests. People are fighting, people are dying. Lord God of peace, hear our prayer. Grant us peace, teach us peace. Guide our steps in the way of peace to live as sisters and brothers. Give us the strength daily to be instruments of peace. Keep alive within us the flame of hope, so that with patience and perseverance, we may opt for dialogue and reconciliation. Lord, diffuse the violence of our tongues and our hands. Renew our hearts and minds, so that our way of life will always be that of Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Peace, peace, peace. Loka samasta sukhino bhavantu. May all be happy. May all be blessed. May all of us live in peace. Once again, dear sisters and brothers, distinguished guests, participants, a most cordial welcome. We are delighted that all of you have joined for this program, the speakers as well as the participants. We are thinking about promoting sustainable societies. And we had already 2 days of webinars in Argentina on that topic of sustainable societies and education. And today we are focusing on towards knowledge societies. And in this opening remarks, let me propose shaping sustainable societies through knowledge societies. Yes, 2 days of webinar focus on knowledge societies, but our goal is sustainable societies, to which I propose we need an education with an economics of enough and ethics of care. Greta Thunberg, a young woman from Finland, dared the world leaders at the UN Climate Action Summit and continues to dare us. People are suffering. People are dying. Entire ecosystems are collapsing. We are in the beginning of a mass extinction. And all you can talk about is money and fairy tales of eternal economic growth. For sustainability, economics is necessary, but the story of the eternal economic growth does not sustain. We are living in a limited planet with limited resources. She continues, how dare you? The politics and solutions needed are still nowhere in sight. With Globe Ethics and with all of us, we propose that ethics education is the key. Development of a Globe Ethics, a shared system of values. Increasingly, we are aware of the fact that industrial revolutions do not bring in sustainable growth, sustainable development, and happiness for all. Science and technology are to be complemented by arts, humanities, social sciences, indigenous know-how, and wisdom. We were considering a process of STEM, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. They are necessary. However, they are not sufficient. We need STEAM, science, technology, ethics, aesthetics, and mathematics. Without the humanities, we will not be able to save humanity. and we will not be able to save our planet. We need ethically shaped knowledge societies to shaping sustainable societies. Ethics and values education in institutions of higher education contribute to this noble goal. To this noble goal, we bring our humble suggestions, humble projects to discuss, to deliberate, to discern, and to judge. Proposal is we need an education which focuses on economics of enough and ethics of care. Generally these days, there is the talk about the gap between industry and academy, as if education is for employment, employment is for economy. If GDP is increasing, we all will be happy. No, GDP does not increase the index of happiness or well-being. We need education with ethics. We need employment with ethics for sustainable development, for prosperity and peace, for people and planet. As you understand, those are the 5 P's of sustainable development goals. We are entering into partnerships for peace and prosperity for people and planet. Today, under the leadership of Globethics, we are gathering together with the Cebu and Christ University, and many of you, all of us who have joined, and through us, our institutions, we are entering into a partnership with the noble goals of peace and prosperity for people and planet. Dear friends, as you know, these are 4 powers that are available to human existence and life. First is muscle power, meaning physical power. And today that always counted as military power and political power. We are what we are with our physical power. Then we have a money power, which now overcomes the muscle power. We have resources and market. And these 2 seems to be leading the world. But that's not enough. We need the mind power, science, technology, humanities. Our knowledge societies should guide the market, economics, and the politics. And our submission through Globethics and through these conferences is we need moral power. The highest power is not muscle power or money power, but knowledge power and moral power. And to enhance our moral power, to enhance ethical societies, so that we could shape knowledge societies to shape sustainable societies. All of you, I'm sure, familiar with the 4 pillars of learning and education proposed from UNESCO. Learning to know, referring to the knowledge power, and learning to learn, and learning to do, referring to technology as well as our muscle power. We need to upscale our skills and update and develop a certain competence. And often universities and education institutions limit ourselves to these 2, information and skills. They are necessary, again, not sufficient. The noble goal of learning to live together, which is necessary. We are all living an interconnected world. There, we need to learn to live together in our primary education, secondary education, and in the tertiary education institutions of higher education, how to learn to live together. And fourthly, and most importantly, learning to be. To be refers to my self-realization in union with fellow human beings and with nature and with God. These 4 pillars, as I suggest you, 4 C words. Learning to know, develop a certain confidence in us. Learning to do develop certain competence in us. Learning to live together is a question regarding contribution. What is my contribution towards knowledge societies, towards ethical societies, towards sustainable societies, and learning to be character. Today we speak about outcome-based education. I propose and suggest we need a character-based and character-oriented education where the knowledge, power, and the skills would be to live together. That's why the fourth sustainable development goal is ensure inclusive and equitable quality education and promote lifelong learning opportunities for all. We need quality education, lifelong learning to have, to develop knowledge societies, to promote, to shape sustainable societies. The SDGs, Sustainable Development Goals, are interconnected and comprehensive. There is a recognition that we cannot meet one goal without achieving other goals. Education and research are essential to all SDGs and connect all other 16 goals. None of the 17 Sustainable Development Goals can be achieved without the contribution of higher education and research. We need an integral approach where science is guided by the wisdom of philosophies, traditions, and religions, where market and politics are driven by ethics, not by lust for money and power. Economical worldviews put cash values to all the natural resources, products of science and technology, and even people. They are only for those who have economic resources. Ecology and economy dance to the tunes of human hubris and greed, forgetting the poor who do not have money to pay, causing extinction of species and destruction of planet. And now we are in a stage of Anthropocene where we are a threat to the planet, to the people, and to all other living beings. The economics of more destroys our common home and those who live in it because of human hedonist, consumerist, and throwaway culture. We need to wake up the fact that we cannot continue to live healthily and flourish in a planet with limited resources, a planet that is sick. Because of our madness in the pursuit of limitless growth, millions are suffering. Many species are disappearing and ecosystems are dying. We need to envision and live the economics of enough and ethics of care, together with the economics of care and the ethics of enough, for sustainable prosperity and peace for people and planet. Lao Tse said, one who knows that enough is enough will always have enough. Globethics Net help us towards this noble goal, to help build peace and prosperity for people and planet through partnerships. We have great number of people, starting with Dr. Obiora, the Executive Director, and Dr. Christo, Founding Director, and number of other members to enlighten us what Globethics Net stand for and what we offer for ethics for students, ethics for teachers, ethics for institutions, and ethics for professions. This is the large array of leaders, speakers, great people who would be addressing. Because it's almost time for me, I don't read the names, but the Globethics Net India is very grateful to Cebu Technological University and Christ University for your fruitful collaboration. And all these eminent speakers, we say thank you. And we look forward to your thoughts. Let they guide us to sustainable societies through shaping our knowledge societies. Thank you very much. God bless all of us.
Thank you, Father Jose, for launching our conversation today so robustly. And as my colleague, Ms. Rajula V indicated at the outset, we acknowledge and appreciate that the original concept for this conference and publications project was conceived and proposed by Father Jose Nandikara, the National Director of Globethics.net India. And you know, as we see, the idea was not only to take up this rich and important and essential theme for today, but also to do it in a way that really makes use of our network, to have region-led events supported by the global team in partnership with many institutions and individuals in our network. And so through this event, we're seeking to explore the potential of this network. And we appreciate everyone here who is participating, contributing. We look forward to your active participation and your feedback about this effort, and we want to build on it as we go forward. So you have described in a way that I am sure resonates with us all, how we deeply and desperately need knowledge and moral power, and that we do not and cannot accept being reduced to or guided by muscle and money. May we all give a very big round of applause, virtual applause, for Father Jose Nandikara. And now I invite Dr. Surukra.
Dr. Nitika. Dr. Nitika is the.
Yeah. Hello. I'm Dr. Nitika Sharma. I hope I'm audible.
Yes, you are.
I'm Dr. Nitika Sharma, Assistant Professor, School of Commerce, Finance and Accountancy. On behalf of Christ, Jtb University, Delhi NCR, India, brings greetings to you all. Christ Jtb University was established in 1969. It undertook a path-breaking initiative in Indian higher education with the introduction of innovative and modern curriculum, which emphasized more on the academic discipline and imparting of the holistic education and the adoption of the global higher education with the supportive of the creative and dedicated staff. We have all 5 campuses, which is more dedicated and focused towards teaching, research, services, which offers to the bachelor, master, doctoral program in humanities, education, social sciences, commerce, management, engineering, architecture, education, law, to over more than 25,000 of the students. You know, the Christ Jtb University has constituted harmonious culturalism, and, you know, it talked about knowledge society, which is a fundamental need of today's time. Currently, in collaboration with Globethics.net, we are contributing with all those 5 P's that we are talking about and participating in this novel conference. Now, it is it is a great honor to welcome and introduce Reverend Father Jtb Devasi, who is currently Director and Dean of Christ Jtb University, Delhi NCR. He is a firm believer that ethics are regarded to be of utmost significance in not only the acquisition of the higher education, but also in the achievement of career and the personal growth as well. His area of specialization has been positive, psychology, psychological disorder, theories, techniques, and he has majorly focusing on the adolescent development, social competency, spiritual intervention, and leadership skills. He's the most dynamic person who thinks that ethics should be the heart of higher education. So on behalf of all of you, I warmly welcome Reverend Father Jtb Devasi for facilitating this special occasion and initiative of global conference, which talks about shaping knowledge societies through higher education. Please take over the stage, Father. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Nitika, for that introduction. I'm grateful that you highlighted about our focus at Christ University. Well, I want to really thank and appreciate Dr. Jose Nandikara for connecting us with globeethics.net India, very especially now today for this conference as well. A couple of years back, before the pandemic, Father Jose introduced both Christine and Rajula, along with Father Pauliton, and they visited our campus, and we had some good time of interaction. So our connection with globeethics.net India started then, and today we are at this juncture where we are collaborating or participating in this conference. I want to thank all my Christ faculty colleagues, especially Dr. Sureka, Dr. Nitika, and I see Dr. Tony presenting a paper, and then also Dr. Rithma Shukla responding to one of the presentations. So I really want to thank all my faculty colleagues here. Christ University, this campus, Delhi NCR campus, which is very close to the capital of our nation, that is Delhi. We started 3 years ago, and we have grown up to a school with 3,000 plus students and about over 250 faculty and staff. Here at this campus, we give a lot of emphasis on to the ethical formation of our students, or formation of our students in ethics. Well, I understand that today, that from Father Jose very well, that our major goal is to achieve sustainable development or sustainable societies. Here at this campus, as part of our holistic education, we impart to all our students a course in sustainable development goals. All our students take a course for 15 hours, 1 credit course on sustainable development goals of UN. And all our students also take up another course on servant leadership. So our vision is excellence and service. And we very strongly believe that if we do not contribute back to the society, if we do not develop in our students social sensitivity, and if we do not intervene in the society through social contributions, we believe that we are not excelling in our goals. We are not excelling as individuals. So my dear dignitaries and all the participants, at Christ, we give a lot of emphasis on to the development of our students in moral, ethical development, social sensitivity, social contribution. So I believe this conference, for my faculty colleagues and for me, is a right, venue to interact, participate, and collaborate, because we both globeethics.net as well as Christ University, we at the end of the day, we try to focus on same goal. We want to create sustainable societies through shaping knowledge societies. So I want to thank all of you for making us partners of this conference, and we also want to appreciate and thank you for you inviting us and then making us part of it. And I wish the conference all the very best. We would be very happy to collaborate whatever possible way in the future, also with globeethics.net India very especially, and want to once again thank Father Jose Nandikara and Rajula and Christine for connecting us with globeethics.net. Thank you very much, and wish all the very best for the conference. God bless.
Thank you, Father Viju, for your kind words and wonderful appreciation towards this special initiative. Your presence means a lot to us. And Father, you really pondered a very right idea, like how we are, using all those really ethical techniques and methods in our studies, and really functioning the branch of psychology in today's time, which really can shape the fundamental process of a human life. Thank you. Thanks a lot. Now, it is a great opportunity for me to introduce Dr. Pavan Duggal, who is a member of globeethics.net Foundation that is based in Geneva, Switzerland. Dr. Pavan Duggal is practicing advocate, Supreme Court of India. He has made immense impact with the international reputation as an expert and authority on cyber law, cyber security law, artificial intelligence law, and e-commerce law. Dr. Duggal has been acknowledged as one of the top 4 cyber lawyers around the world. And also, the World Domain Day has recognized him as one of the top 10 cyber lawyers around the world. It is an honor, to be with us, and your esteemed presence with us is really great, sir. He is here to felicitate this event. Let us welcome him by giving him a virtual round of applause. Dr. Pavan, kindly take over the floor.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you to the distinguished organizers of this conference for giving me this opportunity. Today, when I talk about this newly transformed world that we are living in, we have to be mindful of certain ground realities. One ground reality is that the world is changing while we are sleeping. Well, we are not exactly sleeping. We are busy in our day-to-day routine, mundane works. But while we are busy in our lives, a new cyber age is actually coming forward. By the time the globe as a whole and countries are successful in the fight against COVID-19, we are going to enter into a new cyber world order where everything will be completely new. Cybercrime will be our daily companion. Cybersecurity breaches will be the new normal. And you'll have increasingly powerful nation states. In this new cyber age, ethical considerations will have to play a very important role because we could potentially be seeing huge interference in the enjoyment of digital rights and liberties. And we could even potentially be seeing a migration of some of the major chunk of users from the superficial net onto the dark net. It's in this context that I believe this kind of a conference, the webinar that's been organized, assumes far more significance. My association with Global Ethics has been there for the last many years. And I can tell you, not just as a foundation board member, but as an avid watcher of Global Ethics, that Global Ethics is not just an institution. It's not just an organization. It's a transformational force, which is aiming to transform through its own remarkable manner societies, nations, mindsets, and ultimately policies and approaches towards a more regulated, ethical approaches on almost all aspects of human activity and endeavor. And I believe under the leadership of Professor Christoph Stackelberger, we've actually seen this organization grow from strength to strength. So as a board member, when we look at the various projects of Global Ethics, I can tell you, it's a great sense of satisfaction to see how slowly but slowly we are moving forward towards the achievement of the goals of Global Ethics. As far as the role of Global Ethics on focusing on higher education is concerned, it's phenomenal. The board, a couple of years back, pretty much decided that we have to focus on higher education. And it's here that I find that institutions of higher education can play a hugely significant role in not just the development, but further evolution and growth of a sustainable, ethical society and ethical mindsets. And I believe in this particular mindset, not just physical world institutions, but also virtual world institutions of higher education can play an extremely important role in this regard. We have been running an online education platform called cyberlawuniversity.com. And over the last 4 years, this particular platform has been able to get more than 27,500 professionals from 174 countries, speaking 53 national languages, doing various courses on cyber law, cybercrime, and cybersecurity. And it's these kind of figures which tell you the role of institutions in not just capacity building, but ultimately in changing the mindsets of people. COVID-19, if it's given us one central message, apart from fear and panic, it is that we have to focus on our skill sets, on our digital and cyber skill sets. And I believe the coming one decade is going to be a transformational decade in terms of how we are going to interact with new technologies like artificial intelligence, blockchain, Internet of Things, quantum computing, metaverse, and how we are potentially going to get not just e-commerce and m-commerce capabilities out of these new technological paradigms, but also how we can ensure more ethical standards and principles to be incorporated in the day-to-day functioning of such technological paradigms. It's very interesting times, and it's in this context that I find that the organization of this particular conference assumes massive significance. I would like to congratulate globalethics.net, Global Ethics India, which is doing a remarkable work in not just creating more awareness, but also in fulfilling the objectives of global ethics, and Rice University and other organizational partners to organize this particular conference. Congratulations, wish you all the best, and I'm looking forward to the outcomes and the recommendations in the various sessions of the conference. Thank you for giving me this opportunity. Wishing you all the best. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for your enlightening word. You rightly said that, hello, I can help, how I can help you is a usher to all the solutions with this AI, m-commerce, e-commerce, but still ethics, values play a very significant and fundamental role in today's time. So I really feel, privileged, and it's always great to listen to you. Your words are really brilliant, very relevant in today's time. And we would love to listen to you more. Thank you very much once again, sir. Over to Ms. Maria.
Thank you. Greeting from Buenos Aires, Argentina. It's a pleasure for me to introduce Julio Duran, Professor Dr. Julio Duran. He is the Academic Secretary of Universidad Austral, one of our key partners institutions in Latin America. He is the director of the Master in Management of Educational Institution, head of the Research Center of Educational Policy and Higher Education, and the academic advisor of the Regional Coordination Office for Latin America and the Caribbean in the GLOBE program of NASA. Over to you, Julio. Thank you very much. Julio Duran.
Thank you, Maria Eugenia, and all people. Thank you, Globetics, for this opportunity to share a few remarks about our first conference in Buenos Aires last month. I will take the 4P that mentioned Father Jose at the beginning of the conference. And I want also to thank Father Jose for the wonderful prayer, the opening prayer. I think that gave me a bit of hope and the need to pray for peace in our day, in our days. Our conference have these 4 subjects around the 4 P's: people, planet, prosperity, and peace. And it was very, very rich, and we have the participation of experts and specialists in these areas. And I think that the most important was the idea to highlight the goal 4 of the sustainable development, and we have the conference of Professor Carlos Pujadas about educational social responsibilities, which is the idea to apply the stakeholders theory of the social corporate responsibility to the educational institutions. I think it was a very, very inspiring approach, because the idea that we need to change the way our institutions, educational institutions, function. I think it's very important, because if we don't practice what we are trying to teach, it will be very difficult to change our lives and the life of our students and to change society. So the idea of being social responsible for the institutions, I think is a very important priority. And other in the other subject, we received the professor of London, Tristan McCowan, to have some remarks on planet on the climate change issues that are very hot discussions, and so it was also very inspiring and it with I think very important to have a place in our schedule in our agenda. And in the second day, thanks to Christoph Stuckelberger and a panel on the peace process in Colombia, we can reflect on this so difficult issue in our base, that is the peace and the relationship with sustainable development in our societies and the real causes of some of the wars and the problems. And it was very interesting to reflect on the need of the commitment all of parts to reach some consensus and agreements to live a real peace. And to finish with this few remarks, the P for prosperity was very interesting in a conference that management professor of our business school was focused on the need to change the way that business education is delivered in our days, and the problem with the absence of ethics. And I will close this with the remarks that Mr. Bernardo Kliffler, a very well-known professor on sustainable development, talked us about the 5 failures of ethics in our society. So our conference was very rich, and I think a lot to Globetics to invite us to collaborate in this conference. And I think it's very interesting to see you in the introduction of your conference, the second conference, because it is clear that for building knowledge societies, real knowledge societies, we need to establish strong fundamentals, and this will be ethics teaching in all our institutions. So thank you very much. I wish all the best for the conference, and thank you, Christine, Rajula, and Christoph, and all people in Globetics. It is nice to me to be now in contact with you all around the world. Thank you very much.
Christine.
Thank you very much, Professor Dr. Julio Durant. And we're so happy that you could come in and help us create the link. And we want to keep doing it as we go along. And Father Joe's also did so well, telling us how this discussion of knowledge, it's in the service of sustainability. This discussion of ethics, it's required for sustainability. And so you gave us a little insight into the first conference. That recording will be available online for anyone who wants to watch it. So it is early morning in Argentina. You've joined us today. Thank you for your precious time.
Dear participants, and I take this opportunity and I'm really excited out of my special excitement that I introduce and welcome Reverend Monsignor Professor Dr. Obiora Ike, who will talk to us on, who is here to give the thematic address. Dr. Ike, who was born in Northern Nigeria, is a Catholic priest, scholar, publisher, and author. He's an acknowledged and sought after public speaker and bridge builder across religions, cultures, and continents. And he's a human rights activist and a development practitioner. Dr. Ike has held several positions of service in church, society, and state within Africa and also in Europe. Currently, he's the executive director of globalethics.net based in Geneva, Switzerland. I'm sure all of you will be motivated by his thematic talk. With these simple words, let's give a virtual round of applause to Dr. Obiora Ike. And Dr. Obiora, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Rajula, and good morning, good afternoon, good evening to all our participants. I see already near 150 people gathering from around the globe. It is a tremendous pleasure to share knowledge, societies, and shape it. And the title of this entire event is Towards Sustainable Knowledge and Ethical Societies. I find this thematic very, very important, knowing also, as my press speakers have said, that not long ago, Latin America focused on this topic across several universities. Today and tomorrow, we are focusing on the same discussions with India. And not long after this, the African continent will also be looking at it from their own point of view. And it is one topic, the same topic, towards sustainable knowledge and ethical societies. How can we shape knowledge? How can we shape our society? It is a pleasure, therefore, to bring the greetings of all of us from globalethics.net. We are collaborating with Christ University in India for today's event, and with many other institutions, with globalethics.net in India, of course, to ensure that we can share knowledge. But you know, that word is English, knowledge. But knowledge comes actually from Greek, gnosis. And when the Greeks spoke about knowledge and gnosis, it was something that they called episteme. Episteme will be understood like in English, we say epistemology. It is a system of capturing thought. And when they use the word thought, the Greeks came with a topic called logos. And the logos, which is word, verbum in Latin, the word is the expression of the thought. How do I know what you are thinking? I can only know what you are thinking when you speak it out, when you verbalize it. But when you verbalize it, is it systemic? Is it content-filled? Or is it ephemeral, just something on the outside? Because often the confusions we have is that we are communicating, we are trying to say something, but we don't understand what the other is saying. So somebody says, I'm saying something, you don't understand me. Parents quarrel, husband and wife quarrel, students quarrel, politicians fight because they are saying something and they feel misunderstood and they start saying, you don't understand me. So it leads to ideologies, the ideas of the logos. So there's logos, the idea of the logos leads to this ideology that now comes into the plenary of world politics, communism as an ideology, capitalism as an ideology, and you have many logies. What turns out? Fight. Because the logia, the ideas of the logic and the absolutization of knowledge becomes a problem. A gentleman in that context known as Socrates lived. And he said, gentlemen, please, because entire Greek antiquity was filled with fights. The same happened in India. It happened in African nations. Just read the histories of nations. Fight, Macau. So Socrates came into the theater and he said, please, Rega, rega, lente, lente. Knowledge is virtue. Let us not fight about knowledge. Let us live it out. Knowledge is virtue. Virtutes, virtus. And Socrates, of course, gathered the young, tried to tell them it is not about the teaching and the knowledge, it's about the lifestyle. And this virtue, which is called ethos, from where we get ethics, is doing that which is right. Doing that which is right, and I'm talking about the thematic of this entire conference, is how do we get that which we think in a rightful situation, rightful transmission, that it is now in the middle. Because Thomas Aquinas, a scholastic in the Middle Ages, will now say, knowledge is virtue, and virtue is in the middle, not extreme, not this extreme, not that extreme, not idios, logos, ideology, but rather trying to bring it to the middle, not trying to be extremist. That's one of the problems we have, which Father Jose Nandikaran has addressed, the problems of extremities, the problems of wars, the problems of hunger in the middle of plenty, the problems of greed, the problems of exploitation of our environment, the problems of human personalities and ego. Socrates' teaching, which Thomas Aquinas in Christian philosophy picked up, was, you know what? Not extremism. Bring that which you know as virtue in the middle. So they developed character. Virtue is character. And character is living that which you teach, which you preach, which you know. Let us put it in context. Knowledge is not the problem of the world. We have so much knowledge, technological knowledge, philosophical knowledge, social knowledge, anthropological knowledge. There's so much of knowledge around the world. There's so much of knowledge to transform. Look at the houses we build. Look at our architecture. Look at nanotechnology. Look at the sciences. There are knowledge that are profuse. They are logical. They build upon one another. Knowledge is not lacking. There's so much of knowledge. But shaping knowledge towards a sustainable environment is what my university in Nigeria calls the unity of knowledge. There is a unity of knowledge around the topics of environment, of ecumenism, of the mind, and of the spirit. And it is possible for people to reach there. In transcendental philosophy, under Immanuel Kant, a German of the Middle Ages, he came out with a book, The Critique of Pure Reason. In this critique of pure reason, he says something like, there is nothing as practical as a good theory. So when we come out with theories, a good theory must be practical, otherwise it is ideology. It is foreign. It is something in the Deus Otiosus, beyond the clouds. Immanuel Kant spoke again about the unity of knowledge. So he wrote a book, Critique of Pure Reason. He wrote another book, Critique of Practical Reason. And he said that there must be merged theory and practice. So the content of what we know is that which is various, but the practice of what we know and teach is that which is important. And it is this, not just any kind of knowledge, but that kind of knowledge that is virtuous knowledge, that is serviceable. We may even say that this knowledge showcases itself in the word ethics. E, transformation, empowerment, inclusion, competence, holistic approach, sustainability. So if I try to define ethics and I give it to you as a way of bringing knowledge into life, let us take the lesson also in trying to transform people, planet, prosperity, and all the P's, that we make ethics a way of life. That is transforming knowledge, gnosis, into action. It means E for empowerment, we empower ourselves, we empower others. T, we transform our environment for that which is the good, that which is in the middle. H, for the holistic approach, is not only about me, it's about everybody. And then we do it with respect and integrity, which stands for I. And you cannot be half good and half bad, half truthful and half lying. It must be integrity all round. C, for competencies, we have to build knowledge, gives us competence, but that knowledge is about that which serves humanity, not the destructive one. And the of S is sustainability. It must look at the past, focus on the present, and continue into the future. So what we are trying to do is moving from theory to the practice of theory. There are many teachers, but there are not many people who practice what they teach. And the old Latin will always say, agnosciti quod agitis, imitamini quod tractatis. Know what you teach, practice what you know. Imitamini quod tractatis, put into practice that which you know. This is the gap in society. People live double lives. They have faith, but they don't practice charity. And John and Jacob and James in the Bible, they try to put it across. Show me your faith, and I will show you my works. For faith without good works is dead. Ladies and gentlemen, we are discussing not only a theoretical topic, we are discussing a practical topic. We are moving from theory to practice. We are talking about how we can shape knowledge by shaping sustainability in societies. And it is a collective work. There are teachers, there are students. Students become teachers of tomorrow. I am indeed very, very happy that globeethics.net in Geneva is triggering off an intellectual and also a practical collaboration among peoples of the world. I listened to my speaker before from Argentina, and we've gotten now me speaking from Geneva. And who will speak after me is the president and founder of globeethics.net, Professor Dr. Christoph Stuckelberger, who developed even the idea about how the globe will talk around ethics, around the middle, around that which brings us together. Knowledge shared for sustainability. And it is virtue, it is the good. And the good is that which makes us happy. And that what makes us happy serves everybody. It's not about greed, it's about us. So Globe Ethics is pushing for a world where knowledge is generated through ethics, where ethics is understood as that which everybody can reach to and practice, and where universities that teach mathematics, biology, physics, engineering must incorporate ethics into the lives of the students, that they don't become only those who know, but those also who live. I close it with the statement of John Lewis, very famous writer, who was always said, you know, knowledge without virtue, without character, brings in devils, because the devil is very knowledgeable, but the devil does not live the good. So too much knowledge is good, but that knowledge must be put into action. When we have knowledge and we don't have the good that comes from knowledge, then the devil is the next epitome for this. Thank you very, very much. I wish all of us good contributions and good collaborations. God bless you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Obiora Ike, for launching us today. You know, we see the applause, we see the thumbs up. We heard an earlier question in the chat where someone was already saying, before you even spoke, how do we implement what's being said already in a practical, grounded way? There's a hunger, you know, for this connecting between theory and practice. Go deeper into the theory and go deeper into the practice and keep the two together. So you've really explained to us that this is our work. This is the work of this conference. This is the work of Globe Ethics. And you've really helped us to now enter into this topic of shaping knowledge societies. We thank you for your presence with us and your contribution. please let's give Dr. Obiora Ike a round of applause. I think it's over to you. I think it's over to you, Herbert.
Yeah, thank you so much, Christine. My name is Herbert Makinda from Nairobi, Kenya. Respected participants, it's my pleasure to introduce our keynote speaker this morning, this afternoon, this evening, depending on where you are located. And our next speaker is none other than Reverend Professor Dr. Christoph Stuckelberger, who is the founder and president of the Global Network on Ethics, globethics.net Foundation, based in Geneva, Switzerland. He is also the executive director of Geneva Agape Foundation in Geneva. He is a professor of ethics in the University of Basel. He is, of course, Professor Emeritus, a visiting professor of ethics in different universities in Leeds, UK, in Moscow, Russia, Enugu in Nigeria, and Beijing in China. He served for a long time as director of the development organization Bread for All in Swiss advisory commissions on international development and on bioethics. He is in the board of ethics funds, active in Faith Invest, ethics advisor of the United Nations Scaling Up Nutrition Program. He largely published on business ethics, finance ethics, development, as well as environment. May we now listen to his talk on cultural differences and campus experience of international students, an ethical overview. Dr. Christoph Stuckelberger, the floor is yours, and kindly let us give him a virtual applause as he comes on. Welcome.
Thank you so much, Herbert, and thank you for the organizers of this excellent conference, the participants, and also the speakers we already heard. I think my topic will be really related to what we already heard, and try to deepen it in addition. The topic, before I show some slides, I'd like to mention the deep appreciation for the Indian context. I am in India since first time was 79, so over 40 years. As a young, at the end of my studies as a young assistant with my wife, we went to Coimbatore, to Bangalore, to Madurai, to Chennai, and then later to the northern part and Delhi and so on. So about this 20, 30 times I was in India, I learned a culture, I learned to know a culture which is very profound. I'm not idealizing, we know poverty, we know power games, we know many things which do not go well. But we also, I acknowledge the deep roots, cultural, religious, intellectual roots of India as almost a continent, I would say, an amalgam of so many different cultures. That's not just to flatter the Indians among us here, but as mentioning the deep roots of knowledge, and we in GlobeEthicsNet, we try to integrate. Is it the wisdom from South America? Dora and Julio, you mentioned it. Is it from Africa? We heard it from from Obiora, and we'll hear it during the meeting. Is it from Europe, the whole philosophical tradition, which was referred to by Obiora Ike in an excellent way, an African who knows and understands European philosophy better than many of my students in Basel I had. So this integration of the knowledge and tradition in the different cultures, I think that is the strength, that is the mission from the very beginning. Let me just add one word. When I founded Global Ethics Net in 2004, we held a founding workshop here in Geneva, in Bosse, for 1 week. And I handpicked 20 people from all continents, because I said, I have a vision, I have an idea, but let's develop this from the very first moment together. So 1 week we designed the goals, the objectives, the methodology, the network together. That's the DNA of globalethics.net. Now let me go to my slides. And I will, let me just share a slide, so just a minute. Yes, I'm a bit provocative by changing already the title of this conference. Let me, sorry, full screen. No, it's not visible because. Okay, I hope you see it. Huh? Can you see it? Okay.
We can.
So the topic, I call it a bit different from what Herbert mentioned, the WWW strategy in higher education. And I use very rarely now German, my mother tongue, but here it works. Wissen, Weisheit, Werte. 3W. Wissen means knowledge, Weisheit means wisdom, and Werte means values. So I want to talk about, and whenever you open in future your browser and type www, you may think of not only the browser technology, but you may think of Wissen, Weisheit, and Werte. And the title I would then change and say shaping the, not the knowledge societies, but wisdom societies. So I want to reflect, and I did not do it in the past often on this wisdom issue, but I was provoked by this title, Shaping the Knowledge Societies. And
Christoph, just to mention that we don't see your slide on the large screen. We're seeing your kind of personal view where we see the next slide as well. It's okay, but if you can switch.
That's not what I.
Right.
I have chosen full slide. Sorry, I end it. It's very strange.
If you go over to on the lower right-hand corner with a little icon, you can also click onto the slide, the large. That's the same thing. We're seeing your next slide. It's like a personal view.
No, you don't see it, but it's the next slide, but you see, okay.
We see it, it's not as big as it could be, but it's okay.
No, it's not okay, but on my screen, it's the big one. I'm sorry.
All right.
Display settings, just a. Is it now okay? You see now the full one?
Yes, that's it.
Okay, okay. So, I have 6 small items. The first one is knowledge is needed, but not enough. And I can refer what Father Jos and also brother, if I may call you Obiora, brother Ike Obiora, mentioned already. I start with a definition of knowledge. Is the accumulation of facts and data their analysis, interpretation, so hermeneutics means to interpret, to understand by causes, effects, interactions, and conclusions for decisions and actions. That's, I think, I mean, that's my own definition, but knowledge is seen as knowing facts and figures and interpreting them. So we are in a situation, and Pavan Dugal, our close friend and board member, is at the top not only of cyber law, but of knowledge accumulation trends. He knows much about that. When we look at worldwide knowledge doubles until 1900 about every 100 years, with the Internet of Things about every 13 months. And IBM calculated that with artificial intelligence, it's doubling about every 12 hours. I mean, we just cannot imagine it. Neuroscience found growth of number of synapses in the brain connections as child is growing exponentially. Our grandchildren, I mean, it's so amazing how they learn every day, and they exponentially increase their knowledge. But then, of course, with adult people, it's fortunately not the same speed. Otherwise, we would be crazy. So knowledge is very needed in higher education, but it's not enough. That's my point on this. And I think I can refer to the other speakers. Now, what is then wisdom? Wisdom or Weisheit is the holistic integration of A, knowledge, facts, skills, hermeneutics, then B, understanding, interpretation of facts, which is ideology, as Obiora said. Also, experience, own and historical. Why do we study history? Because we learn from history. We integrate the experience of others. We enlarge our experience from our own local small biographical experience and enlarge it in time and in space. So that is part of wisdom. It's not just we look at a robot and artificial intelligence. Even now in future, robots will integrate a lot of historical experience. But then the number D of wisdom is what we call in theology revelation, divine inspiration. There is a level of understanding which goes beyond our normal human existence. And then ethical behavior, the implementation of all that. And that's very interesting that the other speakers already spoke about. Knowledge goes beyond just knowing something. It has to be related to doing, to implementing. That's why I create a foundation like GlobeEthicsNet. Why I'm in very practical issues like ethical investments, because we cannot just know, we have to do. Now, very interesting also etymology. This word wisdom and Weisheit, Wissen in German, comes from the Sanskrit root Ved or Ved or Veda. When we are in India, the word Ved or Veda is everywhere present somehow. So it's an Indo-German common root, I would say, even in our language. So Wissen, Weisheit, Veda is somehow the old knowledge that knowledge is more than just facts and figures. So knowledge without wisdom is not sustainable, and knowledge without ethical practices is empty. That's a bit my provocative conclusion on that. Now, AI and robots as the modern gurus, pastors, philosophers, a question mark. I had the chance to have a dialogue with Sophia, the robot Sophia. You see her on the photo here. She was in Geneva in the ITU conference 2018, and we had a workshop as GlobeEthics.net. And it's interesting that those who created this machine called Sophia, they called them her wise wisdom. Sophia is the Greek word for wisdom. So And I would say, no, that's not wisdom. That's not yet wisdom. Who knows? Maybe in 50 years, a robot, or certainly in 2 years already, a robot is much more intelligent than now. But I mean, at this time, 4 years ago, it was very clear this was not yet a wise person. It was a robot, but interesting. I could dialogue. When I spoke, she responded. So this is the situation with AI. Enormous potential, and I'm not at all against it. We cannot avoid it, and we have to embrace it as a tool, as an instrument. But they are sometimes exaggerated and seen as the saviors of humankind. If you go to the Silicon Valley, it's about the silly valley where people think that AI is then the savior of and the new gurus and the new priests and the new philosophers. So AI and robots should be used as helpers, but not abused as wise saviors. That's my conclusion on that. And now, what is relation? I'm coming to one word, and we would find similar words in the Hindu scriptures, in the and in the Buddhist scriptures, where Paul says, I do not understand what I do. I do not understand myself, because for what I want to do, I do not do, but what I hate, I do. That's the suffering of human existence. We all have this same experience. We know what to do. We know what sustainability means. We know what climate change would need to do, but we don't do it. So wisdom is knowing and doing is one. This is the characteristics of divine wisdom. You see in all the creation stories around the world where it is described God or the divine had an idea, and at the moment when the idea came up, it was done. So it is not a separation. God had an idea as creator, and then he waited for years, and then it was done.
We're not hearing you, Christoph.
Sorry. Is it? Can you hear me again?
No, the mic got fuzzy.
Okay. Can you hear me?
It's the same.
Okay, let me switch to the. Can you hear me now? Hello? Can you hear me now?
I hear you, but it's a little fuzzy.
It's still fuzzy. It's. Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
As we're waiting for Christoph to fix his sound, we invite everybody to continue to. It's about the same, Christoph.
Yeah.
To continue the conversation in the chat, continue introducing yourself.
No, but
That's better. That's better.
oh.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, let's continue. So the relation between the three, knowledge, wisdom, and values, is this problem of doing what we know. And wisdom is the unity of that. And I think that's why our education system should really look at that. Higher education needs much more wisdom education to complement knowledge education and to reconcile ethics and behavior. And that leads me to the next slide. If we look at examples, you see on top left, can you hear me still?
Yes.
Okay. Sarasvati, when I was at the university, the private university north of Delhi in Noida, they have at the entry a statue of Sarasvati, the Hindu goddess of knowledge, arts, music, creative intelligence. This is more, in my understanding, than just knowledge in the narrow sense. It's this holistic view of a Hindu goddess of integrative and creative knowledge. Then we have Jesus in the Dharmaram College, where Father Chose is teaching. We have this meditating Jesus in the Indian Guru style, also as an entry statutes in the college. Then we have Hildegard von Bingen on the right side, the mystic, a great mystic person in Germany, where we say this is not knowledge, this is wisdom that she was discovering. But then I also show Daniel, he's our neighbor in a holiday home in France. He has no education, only 4 years of primary school. He worked for 40 years in the same factory and the same machine, but he has a deep wisdom of life. So we should not only look at the big figures like Socrates or Hildegard, we should look at also wisdom in what we call ordinary people. Now, to come slowly to the end, triple W means power and dealing with secrecy and openness. And that is something we also have to consider. Knowledge, wisdom, and values is a triple power. It can be abused and used. Shyness and respect for the abuse lead to use it as a secrecy available only after initiation. And when we look at history, for example, when I was in Jaipur, in the headquarter or north of Jaipur, in the headquarter of the Jain community in a monastery, I had to do a whole initiation rite in order to be, and not the first day, maybe on the third day only, I could meet His Holiness Guru and leader of the Jain community. So this praxis, which we need to be initiated into knowledge. It's not just on the road. That I think is true, and at the same time, it's often abused as a secrecy to dominate and oppress others. And that's what's happening now. Google does not want to share the algorithms behind the search machines because it's power, it's money. And this is, we have to thematize, we have to speak about that. It's not possible that we have knowledge as secret, even though our business model is nothing bad. But sharing some algorithm methodologies has to be done in order not to drift into this secrecy of knowledge or wisdom. Socrates sharing of knowledge and wisdom, and then Jesus was clear on that. Every believer can get the Holy Spirit of wisdom. I share it with everybody. I don't keep it for myself. And to close with a few practical steps, a GE course on Wissen, Weisheit, Werte, wisdom, knowledge, and values. Publications to promote proverbs. We published a collection of 100 proverbs from Benin, Africa, in local language, in English, in French. And that's an example of learning from proverbs, because proverbs are collective wisdom collected over time. Promote spiritual elements in higher education teaching. We should not shy away and say, where is the morning prayer? Where is the yoga exercise? When I was with Globethics at a conference in IIMB in Bangalore, this one of the leading technology institutes in India, and they have compulsory course on yoga on outside, inside the college, but outside the rooms. So, and our Buddhist board member, she unfortunately died, she exercised Buddhist mindfulness exercise at the beginning of every of her lecture. So we should be more provocative and say, you teacher, please start your course with a spiritual exercise, because only then we can integrate knowledge and doing and wisdom. Discover wisdom traditions, guide and handbook for respectful wisdom ceremonies. I also learned from India, there is no conference without lightening ceremony. You have the light, the oil lamp, and we enlighten that, and that is the opening of a conference. I have deep respect for this kind of ceremonies in other cultures. In Europe, when we come, we take the microphone, we start to speak, and that's not a wisdom culture. Challenge secular curricula, as I said. So that's my contribution. Thank you so much for listening.
Thank you very much, Dr. Christoph Struckelberger. And maybe you could take your slide down. We can have a little moment to interact with people. We thank you very much for highlighting the essential point that it is wisdom that we wish to cultivate. And we want to make sure and include this in our understanding of knowledge in one way or another. And so here's a question for you. How do we cultivate wisdom or deal with wisdom, maybe particularly in higher education, in a world with competing cultures and values, or different and sometimes competing?
Yeah, in brief, I think the one key issue is the relation between the teacher and the student. It has to be much more than just I'm there, I stand there, I teach, and I go home. It has to be a kind of living community. When I look back to my old student times, the most I learned from teachers who had time in the breaks. Maybe we had an evening discussion at home of the teacher. We did practical things together. That is holistic education. But the teacher who comes and at the time he leaves there and we don't see him until next week. This is not holistic education. So that would be one answer for me. A living community of teachers and students. And that's the tradition of the gurus, of the holy people, of even Jesus. You know, he was a living community with his disciples. He does not just say, I'm the Sermon on the Mount, I teach and I go home and I have my own food. No, it was a living community.
Thank you very much. As you've indicated, and as OBR did as well, in one way or another, this is really the whole preoccupation of globeethics.net. And so this is what we're here to explore together and to deepen. And it's what we do and what we want to do better. I have a question from one of the paper givers sent me in a private chat message saying, James K.A. Smith tells us much wisdom can also be learned from secular liturgies. Your thought on rituals made me think of this. Can you think of examples where ritual might be helpful in educational or university settings toward cultivating wisdom?
Yes, certainly. And I mean, when I emphasize the religious one, we should not be exclusive and say those who feel they are not religious or they call themselves not religious but spiritual or secular. Secular approach can also be wisdom approach, certainly. We should not be exclusive, but rituals are certainly important. I would not say whatever rituals, it makes a difference. You know, if the German Jugend had to greet Hitler in the morning in the classroom to give reference to the political authority, I would not say this is a ritual I would subscribe. So there are a lot of political rituals of submission to authorities which have to be discussed and questioned. But there are rituals of respect. For example, what I learned in Asia again, and I proposed to our son who is a school head, in Asia, there is a Teacher's Day. So once a year, the whole nation, it's in India, it's in China, I learned it in China, the whole nation is celebrating the teachers as a respect, not to say these are holy people, but just to give respect. And now in Europe, we see the teachers have such a low level of respect. There is a lot of violence in schools, even in universities, in America. So we need rituals for mutual respect. And the teacher needs to show the respect for the students. So maybe that's a whole book. We could together develop a book of, that's what I mentioned in my list of practical things, a handbook for rituals in universities to express respect, to express mutual respect, to express willingness and openness and all the rest.
Thank you very much. And thank you for in your list, you know, you're always looking forward. So in fact, we have developed some ideas together that we're trying to then share. And at the same time, we're trying to build new ideas and new resources that we can all benefit from. And as you say, it's a joint work. One more question. It was actually one of the very first questions at the very beginning of the conference, but it relates to your talk and to this theme. It goes to the question of curriculum. So if we're looking at ritual in the community, in higher education, the curriculum is an essential component. How do we add moral education or the cultivation of wisdom in the curriculum?
No, that's very key. And we heard from Father Joes already how they do it, for example, with a course or from Father Viju, the course on that you already offer. But I would go a step further. I think an ethics course in the first year of the studies and maybe after bachelor or first year of the master studies, that's not enough. That's a precondition, that's needed. But then it's often used as I teach Socrates and Kant and Vivekananda and so on. That's nice, but that's not enough. It has to be character education. Ethics, moral teaching means character education. So really looking at my character as a student, as a teacher. And so it's much more interactive how to improve my character. And that is not only in the lesson of ethics, it is throughout the year. Cheating is not ethical. That's why I punish or we try to find a solution. I do not only punish plagiarism, I accompany the person. I had a PhD from Africa. She was plagiarizing. I was telling her, I'm very sorry, we cannot accept your PhD, but I don't want to publish it that you plagiarized because it would be the end of your academic career, finish. But I want to guide you how to avoid future plagiarism. So this is my understanding of character education.
Thank you very much. You know, Christoph, I think that one of the reasons why this conference theme resonated so much with our team when it was proposed by Father Joes is that it really goes to the heart of what Globe Ethics was founded on. You saw 20 years ago, as the proliferation of information was starting, that we needed to elevate the ethical dimension and develop character and knowledge and wisdom, you know, and so this is essential to our prosperity on every level as individuals and as a planet. And so we thank you for continuing to grow with the community in this vision and resourcing us. Thank you for being with us today. Thank you for your provocative proposals, and it's something we can build on together. So everybody, let's please appreciate Christoph and his long-time work and his presence with us today. Thank you, Christoph.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Over to you, Sohini.
Yeah, dear participants, panelists, organizers, and the speakers, with the great pleasure, I would like to recognize the presence of Ms. Lucy Harvey Lopez. She is the Deputy Executive Secretary working from the Home Office, Geneva. We also have Ms. Nadia Balgobin attending from Geneva. She's the Senior Advisor. And thank you, Lucy and Nadia, for joining us. Hearty welcome, and please stay with us throughout the end. Thank you very much. Over to you, Sohini.
Thank you, Rajula. Thank you, Christine. It is my honor to introduce our next speaker for the day, Dr. Meera Bandur, Associate Professor of Philosophy and India Studies School of Liberal Arts and Sciences at RV University, Bangalore, India. She holds a doctoral degree from Manipal University, Udupi, in the interdisciplinary area of environmental philosophy, which she completed through the National Institute of Advanced Studies, Bangalore. She's worked as professor for 8 years at the Manipal Center for Philosophy and Humanities, Manipal Academy of Higher Education, and 2 years at Bangalore City University, teaching philosophy and interdisciplinary humanities. She's interested in a wide-ranging area of interests in Indian philosophy and environmental humanities, such as conceptualization of nature in Indian thought, ecological and environmental ethics, religion and environment, environmental ethics, and sustainability issues. More broadly, her research is currently in the area of lived concepts of Indian philosophy, including place, aesthetics, decoloniality, ecofeminism, and gender issues. She has presented papers in international conferences in many countries and is acknowledged as an expert in her area. She's here to deliver a talk on introducing feeling into a thinking curriculum, ethics of emotions. Let us welcome Dr. Meera Bandur with a virtual round of applause. Dr. Meera, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. I'm also a member of Globe Ethics Pool of Experts and very closely associated with the people by being an instructor in one of their courses on interreligious cooperation for peace. So Globe Ethics is very close to my heart because it allows me to be a true philosopher in action, because usually what I'm doing is transmitting knowledge, as Dr. Christoph says, and Globe Ethics is one place where I can actually be in action about what I truly believe in. Thank you, Dr. Christoph. You've laid a wonderful foundation for me to begin, so I can take off from where you left off, the idea of wisdom. Now, if you ask me what is the difference between wisdom and knowledge, it's actually experience. And what experience teaches us in wisdom, we always say wise people get experience. It's not only experience, it's also feeling. Because wisdom has got something of emotional component to it that knowledge doesn't seem to have, because knowledge seems to be only information, right? So we could look at, let us say, in higher education, now we're talking about university education, knowledge is basically connected to a curriculum. We develop a curriculum, we develop the courses, we develop the lessons to teach. It's everyday business of education. Higher education is this. We develop a curriculum, we put the students through the curriculum, they pass the evaluation tests, and then they get a degree. So how is this knowledge itself created? You have knowledge that is generated through research, right? And research, so there's a paper by Ashwin Paul in 2014, which suggests that knowledge as research is taken by the teachers and the course curricular developers and made into knowledge as curriculum. There's a transfer of a particular kind of knowledge into another kind of knowledge, right? And then what you have is the knowledge as curriculum becomes knowledge as understanding through the medium of teachers. So you further kind of mash up that knowledge or rearrange it or curate it so that it becomes something that the student can grasp and understand. So knowledge as research, as finding, as discovery, knowledge as curriculum, knowledge is developed as a program of lessons, and the knowledge as understanding which enters the student in the classroom. When we develop or when we talk about higher education, we are very much interested in knowledge as research and knowledge as curriculum. And then the pedagogic processes of knowledge as understanding. Okay, we have the OBE, which is the outcome-based education. We all look at how the understanding, we measure the understanding, of course. But the point, what is missing there is that the universities have become kind of hygienic about emotion. They are emotionless spaces. In fact, I would like to now share with you, even as I speak today, it's supposed to be a conference, but as I said, it's an action conference. So I would like to share what happened to me when I was presenting my doctoral research proposal in a very good institute in Bangalore. It's very well known. It's next to the Indian Institute of Science. And an august set of people were sitting in front of me. And I said, I was inspired to take up my doctoral studies because I'm inspired and passionate about the environment. I use the word, I'm passionate about the environment. I love nature. I love the birds and animals, and I want them to be as happy as I am. And I kind of went poetic there in a doctoral proposal. And I quickly caught myself because I was feeling love to the environment in my doctoral thesis. But the first feedback that I received was, you should not be emotional about it because emotional is not objective about research. You know, so the first thing that it shocked me because these were people, you can't, I was telling them, you can't do a research about the environment if you're not passionate about the environment and sustainability issues. It is very simple. I have been an activist before I was a researcher, and I know if I did not love the lake as my own self, I will not stand there in the sun holding up a placard for it. I will not be Thunberg. I will not be able to go and fight my government against the indiscriminate cutting of forests if I was not passionate. It requires me to be passionate and love the environment as much as myself, or sometimes even more than myself, to hug a tree. And all my wisdom from the traditional scriptures and spiritual wisdom has always told me to be passionate, to be, to want. They say, in fact, there's a story that if you want salvation or liberation, you should want it like a breath of air when you're drowning in water. This is what Swami Ramakrishna told Vivekananda, that you should want it like that. There should be passion, there should be force. But what actually happens is that somehow with the force of thinking, critical thinking, analysis, information analysis, objectivity, what happens is we've clinically edited out the richness of emotion from our higher education. And now we are asking students, why are the current generation of students so selfish? Why are they not able to work in teams together? Why has soft skills become such an important business? We're literally having agencies offering soft skill training, which means basically just for two people to get along with each other and talk to each other. We need a curriculum designed by an agency and charging you a lot of money for it. And so the whole point is that it feels like it's assumed that once students gain the ability to critically think and gain knowledge of the system, they will be immediately able to go out there in the world and do what they're supposed to do. And there's a big gap between the kind of information and knowledge they've received and what they're going to give to the world, because they have not been taught to give. They have been taught to work for themselves, earn for themselves, gain for themselves. It's like you've been taught to eat, but not to cook and feed others. It's a kind of a skewed education. And any student who shows, or any faculty who shows a little bit of emotion in the classroom, a little bit of love, a little bit of mentoring, is warned away from being passionate, from expressing emotions, and it's considered to be dangerous in a classroom space. So the affective in the classroom has been ignored. There are lots of papers in psychology about bringing back the affective, but it's largely about the pedagogy of affective pedagogy, right? You're going to teach the students, you're going to mentor them, you're going to be kind, you're going to understand students are not up to the same level. So the teacher's kindness and compassion in the classroom is often written about. But what's not written about is the teaching of emotions in a classroom. So what's interesting about emotions is, on one hand, we want to teach the students to express, identify, and be in touch with their own emotions. On the other hand, we also want to teach the students to regulate their emotions, both of which we're not doing. We are either suppressing the emotional content or overwhelmingly asking students, if students are overwhelmingly sharing their emotions with no filters on social media sites and Instagram. They just, a student just came up to me and said, I don't want to read this essay. I'm like, why? Because I don't like it. I just hate this guy. I'm like, so there's no regulation. There's a direct, it's almost like a throwing up of emotions. And on the other hand, there is also the complete clinical essay that they're supposed to produce at the end of that particular course, right? So in ethical, so this is the first part. How do we teach emotions, and how do we inculcate emotional teaching, emotional regulation? And our ancient systems of spiritual wisdom do provide a way, because there the teacher Buddha, I think Buddha is one of the best teachers in the world, because his pedagogy was quite amazing. We find actual direct written evidence of his teachings. He would always go down to the level of the students, and he would also, that's why he said different things to different people. You won't find a consistent Buddha speaking across his speakers. But as a pedagogue, he was amazing because he always talked through emotion. He always connected with the Shila, the ideas of emotions of compassion, the emotions of kindness, the emotions of listening, the emotions of questioning, the emotions of curiosity. Yes, there are negative and positive emotions, but the negative and positive is the value we add. Because if I'm not in touch with the suffering that I have when something happens to me, I will not understand the suffering in the other. It's only because I know what I've gone through and I'm in touch. It's not just enough to go through, because then I'm isolated. I have to have a same-heartedness to another person's suffering. So an emotion has to be in the curriculum, has to be transmitted from recognizing one's own emotional state, being able to articulate that, because emotions are very difficult to speak about, and then moving from the articulation of emotion to a socio-cultural emotionality, which means you're able to have a social emotionality. I'm supposed to be feeling for an entire group of children in the US who have been subject to gun violence. I have never experienced that in India. I haven't been there, but I must be able to transmit the suffering and the loss of human life that I felt when my grandfather passed away, which is a very personal emotion, move it to the idea of death and loss of younger people. Then from there, I must be able to transform that emotion to the socio-cultural or socio-emotionality of understanding what does it mean to go through a community act of violence. So that creates in me a kind of a motivation to speak for peace, to add this to the classroom. So when I join a company and I know that this company is unethical, I will be able to stand up to the board and say, you're unethical. Right now, as I speak in my own RV university, they're using paper cups every time there's a meeting. I'm passionate about like sustainability and recycling. I kept thinking, how shall I get over it? So I'm going to actually step up to the vice chancellor and talk to him about having glass bottles in the university for meetings, glass instead of having paper cups. So that doesn't come from me knowing paper cups are bad, glass bottles are reusable, blah, 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 blah. That information is available to me and all my colleagues. But who's the person who's going to step up and make that into an action is the one who is passionate. The one who has an emotion, and it's not also an emotion that is out of control. Because if it's out of control, I'll be sitting in a meeting, I'll take the paper cup and throw it on the face of my colleagues, right? That's an unregulated emotion. But learning to transmit that emotion and be regulated in actually standing up for people, standing up for human rights, standing up for sustainability, learning to love nature. Love is the source of wisdom. Because love gives you a different eyes to see from. And if we look at all the great people that Dr. Christoph talked to us about, or Professor Obikra talked to us about, they're all what we call prema murtis. They are symptoms of love, right? So the source of wisdom, what converts knowledge to wisdom is love, is emotion. So coming back to another, I will do the second point here. So this is something that we have to think about. I have no answer for how to do this emotional training. Some people have this emotional expert. I think theater, arts, and literature are the way to introduce emotions, because when you read about emotions and you're allowed to react emotionally to these things, I think emotion develops. So I have my crib with Plato here because he hated the arts. But when you see a beautiful movie and you're able to cry with the hero or heroine in the movie, you're actually, or you read a piece of literature or poem and it moves you and you allow it to move you and you're allowed to express that moving, articulate what moved you in that poem. I think that's when you start to recognize the importance of emotion. We have to look at the affective in our education. I will come to the second point of my talk today, that is in ethical education, where I teach ethics, right? And as a philosopher, that's a very important, I teach ethics, and in India, we know we have in the engineering system, we have this strange course called value education, which is a course where you're supposed to teach values. But what happens in that, in all fairness, the students have access to all the information, what is right, what is wrong, what is practice, what is environmentally sustainable. Then we give examples. A teacher can be innovative and give examples from the real world and actually bring in, like, if there was only one bottle of water and there was a child and a widow and you were all thirsty, whom would you give the bottle to? There's so many scenarios that are done and the students get to role play and learn those ethics. But what actually happens is in the real world, unless there is a, you can critically think and evaluate, but most of the time on the road, when I'm actually behaving ethically, I'm not thinking through it. And that, I think, is the ritual of kindness. I know that from the young age, my parents taught me that when somebody is in trouble, go help. Out of 4,000 times I've jumped in to help somebody who's falling, or got up to give a seat to a stranger, or done these various little acts of kindness. It's only once that backfired. You know, there was a lady who was trying to carry a suitcase up the stairs. I still remember the eighth standard, like 14-year-old me grabbing her suitcase and rushing up the stairs. And then she said, "How dare you lift my suitcase?" She thought I was running away with it. That was the only bad incident in about 40, 50 years of my life. That was the only time when acting with passion got me. So we could safely assume that acting with kindness is a ritual. So you ritualize decorum of kindness. You ritualize kindness. So when somebody is crying, you ritualize putting your hand on their shoulder. You ritualize listening. So the rituals of kindness, the rituals of compassion, the rituals of folding your arms, rituals of humility, I think these are some of the rituals that we can bring in. And when the thing is, when these rituals are there, when there's a sudden position to make an ethical choice, you will jump in and make that ethical choice. It's an informed ethical choice, and you're not going to think like pros and cons of behaving sustainability. Sustainability becomes natural. What is natural? Natural is nothing but ritualistic. I get up in the morning, I brush my teeth. I'm not, every time I'm brushing my teeth, unlike the advertisements, I'm not thinking, oh, the germs are going and my cavities will be. I'm not doing that. I'm just brushing my teeth because it's become naturalized. So similar to the cleanliness as a habit, what about making compassion a habit? What about making feeling for others a habit? How about making ethics a habit? So that is something that I wanted to say. So to conclude, I want to give some time for discussions and questions. So to conclude, if ethical education is about being human, one of the most complex and layered part of our education is able to be recognized, articulate, and be unashamed of our emotional state. So some of the ways in which this can be done, I was just thinking about how we can do is teach students to emotionally map themselves through the day. We have this in a planner community. A lot of people have this little emoticons where we map our emotions for the day with colors, right? If I'm feeling blue, I put a blue circle. If I'm feeling happy, I put a yellow circle. So I map my emotions with colors. I found that is a very good way of recognizing my own emotion. It's a psychologists will be best to guide this on this kind of thing. The second thing is creating spaces to share and listen, because the one-way classroom doesn't have, you don't need to be a teacher and listen all the time. You can train students to listen to each other and share. To understand values and ethics as interconnected with information, knowledge, and action. So what connects knowledge and action is motivation, and what inspires motivation is emotion. So how about infusing feeling into the curriculum, and how can we do that? There is no short answer. I'm not going to be the guru and give you the wisdom of how to do that. But as all of you are here, emotional quotient, yes, there is a beautiful thing, but emotional quotient kind of becomes, again, they quantify it as employability and all that. It's very, it becomes a part. How do you understand your customer's complaint and respond properly to the emotion? That's not what you're talking about. We're talking about how do you feel the compassion towards planet Earth, the love for the planet Earth, and sustainability becomes natural to you, as natural as your relatedness to your own self. So that's something that environmental ethics has been talking about, and I think it needs to move into the realm of ethics too. Not a personal education, feeling education. Feeling education is not therapeutic at the personal level, but let's call it a social therapeutic endeavor, where we are giving therapy to the social in us, to the sociality in us. With that, I will stop here, and I know there's a bit of a time there, but I would like people to ask and respond to the discussions. Don't ask me how to do it. You all have to, teachers and people have to figure out how to do it. And I thank you for the lovely listening that you people have given me. It's always the space that really inspires me to speak as I do. So love you all. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Meera, for the insightful session. I would say, I can read the chats. There's no question, but so much of the appreciation where people can able to relate that what you are saying, though you are talking about something which is very subjective in nature, which cannot be quantified, but it is something which is much needed in today's time. I really loved, particularly when you talked about, when you related, articulation of emotion with the assertiveness. And that can lead to the social therapy, which is a need of an hour that we can talk about. And passion, my area is also, green marketing, sustainable consumption, mindful consumption. So I could relate how these things are related to emotions. So, and if you can read the chats, how they are appreciating, and they can really relate to your words. So thank you on the behalf of everyone here today. Thank you, Dr. Meera, for, taking time to speak to us on today's important topic, feeling into thinking curriculum, ethics of emotion. Your knowledge and wisdom inspired us, motivated us today positively. We look forward to have many more opportunities to listen to you. And on the behalf of everyone here, I express my deep gratitude to you. Thank you once again.
Can I just jump in here and say that Globe Ethics courses in the Interreligious Cooperation for Peace, we actually teach listening as a part of the course curriculum, listening and sharing as a part of the course curriculum. So one of the ways that all of you would implicate, it feels like marketing, but I really appreciate Globe Ethics for making these courses available to world over. So you should go on the, all those participants who do not know about Globe Ethics, please go on the net and check out our courses. They're fantastic. And some of my colleagues here are also instructors. So it's a fabulous place to learn ethics. Dr. Christoph would know all about it because he's an inspiration to all of us. Thank you, sir. Thank you so much.
Dr. Meera, there is one question, if we can take a quick one from Daniel Khan. He's saying, is knowledge is belief?
Yeah, knowledge is belief. If you look at the philosophy, you would say that knowledge is a kind of a belief, but knowledge is called justified true belief. That you can believe in a lot of things, but when you have a proof of that or an evidence of that, it is called knowledge. It's called the Jtb Theory of Knowledge. It's like oodles have been written about it, but I may know a lot of things. I can only say I know it when I have justifiable evidence. But when you're going to teach it, it has to be justified by different kinds of evidence, by proof, right? And the entire thing about scientific knowledge is that there is experiments to justify what you're saying. The nature of knowledge is always about its surety, about its validity, right? You may have knowledge, but it may not be valid. I know, for instance, that my friend is thinking about me. But there's no proof unless I pick up the phone and say, hello, are you thinking about me? And she says, yes. It may be a coincidence she's thinking about me, but unless, but if I say there is a green tree in front of me, I know that there's a green tree outside my window because there is a photograph and my eyes are seeing the tree and it's a reality. So knowledge is a complex problem in philosophy, but knowledge is a kind of belief, but it's a belief that has to be supported through evidence or validity.
Thank you. I can see a few more questions in the chat. If possible, can you, ma'am, if you can entertain them in the personal chat. We have a reactor here is waiting with us. So, dear participant, I take this opportunity to introduce Dr. Emily Equitable, the Academic Dean, GlobeEthics.net, the Geneva-based Foundation for Ethics in Higher Education. She is a dynamic person and a creative thinker. Dr. Emily is a Protestant theological originating from Togo with specialization of ecumenical theology, ethics, missionology. Dr. Emily previously served the World Council of Churches as professor of ecumenical ethics at the Ecumenical Institute, Boise, and as a program executive for ecumenical theological education from 2007 to 2019. She is here to share her remarks as a reactor. Let us welcome her warmly by giving her a virtual round of applause. Floor is yours, ma'am, please.
Thank you so much, Dr. Sharma, and thank you to everyone who contributed to this excellent conference. It's indeed a joy to join you in these reflections for us as GlobeEthics.net. As now a dual accredited provider in higher education, it's a joy to engage with people from different countries, from different regions about the importance of ethics in higher education. And the contributions so far have underlined this. What I have heard is tremendously inspiring. I have heard how there is a consensus about ethics, the centrality of ethics, and I see two directions that have been highlighted. On the one hand, it's important because we need this critical outlook into what we see in our world and what needs to be addressed and changed. And it has an affirmative strand, namely that it underlines what we can do together as human family. We have also learned, I believe, and that came to the fore very strongly, how knowledge needs to be qualified and differentiated, and particularly discussed upon and reflected upon from the perspective of the societal impact. I see that integration plays a major role. This is because knowledge is not just neutral. We have seen how knowledge requires to be intertwined with wisdom, with the right behavior, with a kind of routine by which we can practice certain behaviors. And I think we have seen a very interesting framework emerging, namely that when we speak about knowledge in the perspective of sustainable societies, we have to keep worldviews, rituals, and norms together. In other words, how we see the world and how we create a kind of life rhythm, and how we discern and make our decisions is interlinked. And this is what we have heard also. This has a repercussion on how we organize higher education. There is this very interesting aspect of the pedagogy of knowledge brought to the fore by several of the interveners today. What we believe in is as important as what we do, and this is what we need to translate into the didactics, into the fashion of our education. Mira said it so powerfully, that we have to think of teaching as grounded in emotions and guiding students and emerging scholars of understanding knowledge not as an emotion-free enterprise, but rather as a social therapeutic endeavor. And this is certainly something that I take away, and I am sure all those who participate in this conference join me in underlining. We need to build strong alliances of qualified knowledge that is enrooted in wisdom, in experience, in emotions. These are the drivers for transformation in our societies. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Amelie. Thank you very, very much for being with us, the Dean of the GlobeEthics.net Academy, who's building up our program, building up our curriculum and our offerings to do just this together, to build strong alliances of qualified knowledge, and with that, alliances of individuals and institutions. And so working together for this future that we're all envisioning. Thank you for highlighting that you're hearing a consensus. Thank you for kind of helping us at this midpoint in the conference to kind of reflect on what we've been hearing and begin to synthesize it a little bit, draw out some of the questions, some of the proposals, and some of the ways we can build into the future. So what we believe in is as important as what we do. Thank you very, very much. Let's give a round of applause to Professor Dr. Amelie Akue. With that, I would like to invite to the floor some more of the GlobeEthics.net team. These are members of what we call our partnership and promotion team. And as you've had a little introduction from many of us at GlobeEthics, from Obiara, Christoph, and Mira as one of our pool of experts and one of our teachers, and Amelie, about kind of who we are and what we're doing, we would like to take a moment to say a little more about that. And introduce myself. Actually, I would like to, first of all, greet you. It is midday. It's 12:40 here in Geneva. Hello from Geneva.
Hola, and good early morning from Buenos Aires, Argentina.
Jambo, and good afternoon from Nairobi, Kenya.
Hello and good morning. Michelle Pia from Accra, Ghana.
Vanakkam and good afternoon from Bangalore. It is 4:10 p.m. in Bangalore, India.
My name is Christine Housel, and I'm based at the globeethics.net head office in Geneva, Switzerland, together with our executive director, Obiora Ike, who you've met and heard from, and my colleagues here in their national and regional offices around the world. We are the partnership and promotion team, as I mentioned, from globeethics.net. And we'd like to share a little information about globeethics.net and how you connect with us both today and again tomorrow. One thing that I so appreciate in this work is meeting such talented and committed people all over the world, both partners and colleagues, and exploring and actualizing the potential of our network together, as we're doing here today. Let me welcome my colleague, Maria Eugenia Barroso, based in Buenos Aires, Argentina.
Thank you, Christine. Indeed, Globeethics is a network that activates national, regional, and international projects and conversations. I appreciate the way in which we work at the regions and in the regions. We are invited to take initiative together with our partners to work on our contextual priorities, as well as to continue to contribute with our perspective, priorities, knowledge, and needs with those in other regions through our international team and platform. This conference is an excellent example of our efforts to highlight the discourse in some of our regions, we also maintaining an international process and scope. We look forward to further constructing our network with all of you as we move forward. Let me now welcome Herbert Makinda, based in Nairobi, Kenya.
Thank you, Eugenia. Globeethics creates knowledge through encouraging and sharing research in emerging topics and sharing it through our open access library, our publications house, our online courses, and our conferencing. One thing I have appreciated in our work recently are the books that scholars in our East Africa region joined together to publish, to contribute to ethics in higher education. We have done 2 volumes on mainstreaming ethics in higher education, and the 3rd one is on the pipeline, and the title is Mentoring Ethical Professionals Through Higher Education. All of these are found in our globeethics.net library and can be downloaded free of charge. Let me now welcome my colleague, Susan Acker, based in Ghana.
Thank you, Herbert. I joined the globeethics.net team just a couple months ago, as globeethics.net has set up a new office in Ghana. We are excited to jump into so many wonderful events and activities, such as this series of conferences, and actually encouraged that a new office in Indonesia is being opened as we speak, and hopefully several others this year. One thing I appreciate in my short time with globeethics.net are the concrete initiatives and projects that are designed to mobilize whole communities for engagement with ethics as a priority. One of them is called the Ethics Model of Excellence Tool, EMET for short. The pilot phase is taking place with higher education institutions in our country, Ghana, and is very well received. IMED trains local assessors in university environments to do self-assessment with their institution so that there is concrete feedback for further strategic ethical planning. We look forward to the global rollout of this tool and other such projects. Now, I'd like to welcome my colleague, Ms. Rajula V, based in Bangalore, India. As we all know, she's hosting this second conference together with the India-Asia Organizing Committee. Rajula, over to you, please.
Thank you, Susan. Greetings to you all. Globalethics.net is a platform and a network that connects individuals and institutions who are committed to embedding ethics in higher education and life. We work together to create knowledge and further our common mission. One thing I have appreciated this year is that the regional online conferences, they have allowed more partnership activities with higher education institutions and more participation from India and internationally. We are very pleased to be hosting this conference and invite you all to attend any event organized from India or any other region, as well as our international events. We also hope you will register as an individual participant in our network today. This will include you as a network member, and you will receive our monthly newsletter that gives news of recent and upcoming activities, blog posts from our team and members, news of new books, etc. You will also have full access to our library. Without registration, you can access most of the library, but a few collections require registration. It is simple to register and free of charge. We will share a little more about opportunities through globalethics.net again tomorrow, and all of us are available to speak with you. And now back to the conference. Over to Ali.
Good day. I'm Ali from Cebu Technological University in Philippines. On behalf of CTU, I bring greetings to you all. I'll take this opportunity to introduce and welcome Dr. Professor Dennis P. McCann, who is the Director of Research at Rutland, Faculty Fellow of Silliman University, Dumaguete, Philippines, who is presenting the paper of Dr. Stefan Rutland titled Shaping a New Economic Paradigm Through Research Wisdom Traditions in the Wake of Wars. Dr. Dennis, can you take over the floor?
Thank you. I believe that Rajula, you have my slideshow there?
Yes, Google.
Yeah, you can start it. At any rate, I'm here representing Stefan Rothlin, and he cannot be here because earlier this week, his 93-year-old mother passed away. And so Stefan is on his way home to Switzerland, to Zurich right now. And, you know, he'd asked me, and Christine and everybody had agreed that I would make his presentation for him. Now, what he has for us is a story. You know, I would say that there's a deep consensus about what ethics should be about, the role of the development of the emotions, et cetera, the need for practical, some kind of practical expression, the need for walking the talk. It might even culminate in things like service learning projects that help to overcome the silos that cripple higher education so much. But at any rate, the narrative that he's focusing on here is the production of the Macau Manifesto. And the Macau Manifesto was a document that was created in Macau after our meeting. In fact, I think that was online already because of COVID in October of 2020 regarding the transformation of the economic paradigm. So it was a group of scholars internationally, much like what we have here today, although a little bit smaller, of over 30 people, many of them with people who were either stationed in Southeast Asia or who had significant experience here and who participated by writing on this question of, how do you change the economic paradigm? Could we move on to the next slide? Can you take these? There we go. Okay, go back one. At any rate, so the question is there even any chance of changing an economic paradigm in a situation that he rightly describes as pervasively corrupt? And corrupt doesn't necessarily just mean illegal, but that there is a pervasive lack of morality or moral sensibility that leads to the sum of the general consequences. I mean, even the things that were said earlier about objectivity and everything. So the dominant economic model, and not just in the West, is focused on profit maximization and cost cutting. And instead, we would like to shift the discussion towards recent attempts to further develop economic, social goals, et cetera, consistent with things done by the United Nations, et cetera. So the Macau Manifesto was created after we had these many discussions. You'll see at the end of this, my slideshow, a reference to the 7th issue of the Macau Ricci Institute Journal. That has the full text of the manifesto, as well as several of the papers that contributed to it. So what we were attempting to do was to move away from narrow conceptions of Homo economicus toward a more sustainable paradigm, which is oriented to common good and would serve as a roadmap for like-minded institutions. Stefan's paper wants to focus on 3 major interactive areas that are in the document itself, what he calls the triangle of humanism, economics, and law. And he wants to ground this. Our effort is very much grounded in an ongoing dialogue, particularly with Chinese moral philosophy, as well as Catholic social teaching, but particularly, as he says, the secular framework of Confucian ethics with its focus. Next slide, please. Okay. Confucian entrepreneurship is one example of the humanism that we think can operate here. Now, again, the shift in focus in the paradigm is away from, let's say, solutions to our economic problems that require or focus exclusively on state intervention. Instead, we want to talk about what organizations, what institutions can do, particularly if the people who create them, such as entrepreneurs, are motivated by values that can actually move the thing in a proper direction. So we wanted to learn a lot about how Confucianism actually works and the kind of promotion of emotional intelligence that is absolutely crucial to Confucianism, as well as other religious traditions. And as we show, Confucianism is not simply about personal self-cultivation in any narrow sense, but as the means to a higher end, the creation of a state. This is very true in the Li Ji. You can see this in the Book of Rituals, in a state in which the people may flourish. And of course, it was Confucius's contention that if you created a place where the way was respected and taught, that people would actually be attracted to it. The society could grow because of the inherent attraction of working in a system in which, human virtues were respected. Next slide, please. This also is contingent with our concern over Catholic social teaching. And, Rothland here is quoting from the most recent encyclical of Pope Francis, Fratelli Tutti, which means we're all brothers and sisters, a comprehensive vision of social fraternity under the Catholic, a term that is no longer just Catholic, but solidarity. And so he's got a quote here from Pope Francis about the meaning of solidarity, which again echoes so much of what I think people were communicating in our earlier session regarding the moral basis for genuine education, for genuine wisdom. So we can move on. This also corresponds to Father Rothland is a Jesuit, and it is very much consistent with the aims of Jesuit education, which again are focused on a lasting change of heart. Okay, keep moving, please, the slides. Okay, so we have 3 tracks in it, as I said: common good entrepreneurship, the economic track, we've got the cultural track, and the legal track. There are more details to this. Could you go to the last slide since I'm out of time here? Okay, here's one example, the Focolare movement in Italy. Okay, a quote from Tagore, who is a major source of inspiration for Father Rothland. And finally, the last slide. I'm hoping you can see the last one in the series. There should be one more. Maybe not. Okay. Well, you don't have the one that I sent you. At any rate, what I gave you was the URL on the internet where you can get the copy of the Macau Manifesto, at the Macau Ricci thing. So if you can't find that, the Macau Ricci Institute Journal, you can contact me directly, and I'll be very happy to share any of this I can, as well as Rothland's own work on these things. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for delivering such an informative presentation, Dr. Dennis. Everyone, please let us give Dr. Dennis a round of applause. Now, let me also take this opportunity to welcome Dr. Christiane Hacke, the University Director for the Center for Communication and Media and the OIC University Director for Information, Communications, and Public Affairs of Cebu Technological University. Dr. Hacke is presenting a paper on perceived challenges among student journalists during the COVID-19 pandemic. It is a joint paper of Dr. Juan Marie Maxilo Mangumpit, a faculty member of the Department of English and Literary Studies of Cebu Technological University, and Professor Jonas Flores, the chair of the Department of Development Communication of Cebu Technological University, Philippines. Dr. Hacke, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much for that kind introduction, Ms. Ali. Okay, somebody that is also sharing CTU's vision of connecting with other universities from the internationalization office. Good evening from the Philippines. It's 6:59 p.m. here. Good morning to other parts of the world, and maybe good afternoon to also some other parts where our participants come from. So let me share my screen for my presentation. Am I audible?
Yes, you're audible.
All right, thank you. Okay. Okay, so the title of my presentation, I'm representing actually my other co-researchers who couldn't make it. So I am the one representing the research team. The title of my presentation is Perceived Challenges Among Student Journalists During the COVID-19 Pandemic. And I'm sharing this in behalf of my other co-researchers, Dr. Juan Marie Mangumpit and Sir Jonas Flores from the same university. We're from Cebu Technological University. Okay. So the COVID-19 pandemic has created various challenges that allowed academic stakeholders to reflect on the concerns encountered by school administrators, teachers, and students. Although there have been studies that actually talked about the students' experiences during online classes, but ours actually focuses on student journalists. What for? We know for a fact that in this age of information, misinformation, and disinformation, ethics should be our fundamental framework. So the rationale for the study starts off with the basis as the context that the school student publication serves as a platform for community discussion and a place for those interested in writing and developing their language skills. During the pandemic, the student publications played a key role in providing information about events and occurrences of the school. There have been studies on the challenges in online learning and journalism, but scarce literature on student journalists. Thus, our study would want to fill this research gap by determining the challenges of student journalists, which were not really explored yet. So this study is being anchored by the following theories: diffusion of innovation, knowledge gap, disaster communicative ecology model. So first, the diffusion of innovation theory is developed by E.M. Rogers, a communication theorist at the University of New Mexico in 1962. This theory explains the behavior of people towards a new idea and technology, the process of adaptation to it, and the way in which innovation is communicated through certain channels over time among the members. This theory also explains how people with strong opinions influence the masses through the media. New ideas and innovations frighten people and cause frustration. This is due to the fear that new ideas may fail. This is similar in the case of people who are changing their teaching learning process from the traditional face-to-face to a technologically mediated education encounter these difficulties. From Dabaj et al. 2011. The second theory used in the study is knowledge gap theory. This theory was originally hypothesized by Tikhonor, Dinoho, and Olya in 1970, cited in Jenner 2001, that as the mass media information in a society increases, those with higher socioeconomic status acquire this information faster than low socioeconomic status ones. Other researchers like McLeod and Peirce 1994, cited in Eric J. Jenner 2001, found that communication skills, prior knowledge, social context, education, and exposure are the principal reasons for the discrepancy of information. So with the influence of this theory, the students' socioeconomic status, background knowledge, and their communication skills should be analyzed in order to find out whether the mentioned above are causing any barrier to distance education. From Baha et al. 2011. And lastly, the study used the disaster communicative ecology model. Disaster communicative ecology refers to the resources and information individual use before, during, and after a disaster. This is from Spialik et al. 2016. COVID-19 is considered a disaster in that it is a potentially traumatic event that is collectively experienced as an acute onset and is time delimited. McFarlane and Norris, 2006, page 4. While communication ecology is a broad-based approach to understanding how individuals communicate and gain information. This is from Broad et al. 2013. Communication resources used in a disaster and crisis situation may be different to those used outside of the disaster or crisis context. So for example, tornado sirens or weather radios may not be regularly utilized outside of a tornado and therefore absent from an individual's regular communication practices. From Perrault et al. 2014. Similarly, journalistic relationships in a crisis or disaster might be similar to those outside of a crisis situation, but they might also be different given the circumstances around the crisis. For journalists working in COVID-19 conditions, interviewing people face-to-face might be difficult, but using online video conferencing software like Zoom could mitigate the challenge posed by pandemic restrictions. This is from Perrault et al. 2021. There are a number of related literature, but we have chosen the most recent, and it has been included in our analysis of our data results. There have been studies on the challenges in online learning and journalism. So the following in the reviewed studies, we classify them into two categories: adaptability related, connectivity related, and ICT related issues as the first group. So this is from Abogue and Yawson and Apaya, 2021, Scar and Graham, Hubert, 2021, and Barrett, Linares, and Del Rosario, 2021. And we also have health-related and financial-related issues as the second group, while journalism-related issues as the third group. As to this particular reference, Abogya, Yawson, and Apaya, 2021, determined the challenges students in tertiary institutions in online learning during the coronavirus pandemic. Using the quantitative research design with Google Form as the main instrument, results demonstrated the issues that emerged, such as social issues, lecture issues, accessibility issues, learner motivation, academic issues, generic issues, learner intentions, and demographics. A blended approach where conventional teaching is combined with online teaching should have ushered the learners to complete online learning. Before adopting e-learning, an organization should consider the business environment, technology, content, training procedure, culture, human resources, and financial considerations. From Barotes and Polymenaku, 2004, and Abogue, Yawson, and Apaya, 2021. Hence, scaffolding is very essential in this remote online learning during the pandemic. The methodology we use is a mixed method research that employed both the quantitative and qualitative research design. The study was based on the student journalists' personal experiences and narration of their expressed challenges and opportunities as writers of the Nation Builder, the official student publication of Cebu Technological University. The data were collected from 24 student journalists who were made to answer the researcher-made form via Google Form. And here's the result. Among the challenges, we were able to identify them based on their narrations and personal experiences and categorize and thematize them according to the following: health-related issues, adaptability-related issues, and connectivity-related issues. Those are the first three major identified findings now from the study, followed by journalism-related issues, financial-related issues, and ICT-related issues. So this is actually for the quantitative data that we were able to collect from our respondents. So from this alone, we were already able to conclude that as much as we want to expect that students will be expressing their need on how they can write and concentrate on what they are going to do as student journalists, most of them express the challenges related to health, adaptability, and connectivity. In fact, journalism-related issues already come forth together with financial and ICT-related issues, considering that, of course, the Philippines is part of the third world countries. Most of our students who reside in remote areas really have difficulty doing their tasks as writers and even as students during online classes. And these are the sample transcripts to reflect how students really felt and what are their true experiences when they were doing their tasks as student journalists, at the same time, students doing their online classes. Respondent 11 says that, and I quote, personally, even though I would do caption part, but I feel less reliable if I would just simply borrow someone's picture. So this has something to do again with ethics, that the student himself or herself already felt the need that he or she has to do it personally instead of just getting somebody else's picture without really knowing what happened in the real scene. So this is also something that we can associate with ethics, that we cannot write something which we have not really witnessed personally. From respondent 13, I quote, most of the events are done online, so photos are only taken through screenshots. Thus, I can't practice my skills. So in this case, the student here actually expresses his or her intention of doing it face-to-face, but unfortunately, due to the pandemic, he or she is only limited to what she gets in the screenshot. Thus, according to him or her, the practice and the training of his journalistic or journalism skills is not really put into use. And for respondent 17, misinformation from interviewees. So when we say misinformation from interviewees, perhaps the limited time and maybe the indirect contact with the person being interviewed and the one who interviews may be very limited to validate specific information. And sometimes maybe there might be some ambiguity in the responses from the questions given. So sometimes it also affects the writing of the student journalist. And for respondent 30, hard to find reliable sources of information. So I think this is a very crucial criteria when writing, because you have to make sure that there are available resources of information that are also reliable and can easily be validated. So with this, for the health-related issues, as Barrett and Linares and Del Rosario 2021, they determined the challenges and strategies of college students in online learning in the Philippine context. They found that the pandemic affected the mental health of the college students. They further revealed that the COVID-19 pandemic had the greatest impact on the quality of the learning experience and students' mental health. This study then supports their findings. For the health-related issues, we also were able to take note of two classifications. We have the mental health-related issues and the personal health-related issues. For the adaptability-related issues, journalists attempt to be proactive and innovative and appears to have a way of coping with this lack of consistent and clear information. However, their flexibility and innovation is overshadowed by the limited resources journalists already had pre-pandemic. Perhaps the pandemic conditions only confirm that these hurdles are real and have been destroying the process of journalism in a number of ways. From Perrault and Perrault 2021, page 987. For connectivity-related issues, Abogyay and Yosen with Apaya 2021 found that accessibility is the most important challenge students are facing in a complete online learning situation. In a similar vein, the students' understudies' geographical location could be a factor where there is a strong internet connection. To contextualize, there has always been an issue on internet connectivity in the Philippines in general and Cebu in particular. Students who attended classes online went back to their provinces during the lockdown, and the connection in their specific locations was not as strong when they were residing in Cebu City. This present study supports the contention of Abogyay, Yosen, and Apaya that students were not yet equipped and ready for a complete online experience. For journalism-related issues, in the midst of the COVID-19 pandemic, journalists have the challenging task of gathering and distributing accurate information. Journalists exist as a part of an ecology in which...
Dr. Christie, I'm sorry, it's very rich research, but we're running a little over time. Could you try to wrap up?
All right, so I'll proceed with the implications on shaping knowledge societies through higher education. In an increasingly diversified multicultural society, it is important to incorporate ethical considerations in writing, especially in new normal journalism. Therefore, as a future writer, student journalists need to foster a comprehensive knowledge society with access to information and knowledge, freedom of expression, privacy, and ethics on the global internet. Okay. The study concluded that the student journalists coming from a state university in the Philippines are no exceptions in dealing with the effects of the COVID-19 pandemic. The study identified 5 challenges that were experienced in varying degrees, namely health-related issues, ICT-related issues, connectivity-related issues, adaptability-related issues, and journalism-related issues. These identified challenges were the hindrances to student writers' productivity in writing newsworthy articles and in dealing with their academic requirements. Moreover, the student journalist attitudes towards writing were also affected by the pandemic that caused the identified challenges as the transition from face-to-face campus journalism activities were changed radically to the online mode. Thus, there are action plans that need to be implemented to sustain the interest of the student journalists to write newsworthy and ethically sound articles. I'd like to end my presentation with this quote: professionalism shouldn't be defined by a person's paycheck, role, or title. It should be defined by a person's work ethic. Thank you, and I'll be willing to answer questions later.
Thank you, Dr. Haka, for sharing your wonderful paper with us and pointing out the issues encountered by journalists during the pandemic. Ms. Christine?
Thank you very much. So we're coming to the end of day 1 of our conference. We're running just a little bit behind time, but we see such rich contributions, very rich research. We want to know more. So we have 2 more to go, and then a little bit of wrap up on the day. And I invite you all to stay. I think you won't want to miss it. Some very rich contributions are coming up. So I think we could all just take a little stretch for the final moments of our conference. And we now are so pleased to welcome Ambassador Benoit Girardin to present his paper. He is a holder of a doctorate in theology from the University of Geneva. He joined the Swiss Foreign Affairs Ministry in 1982. He has gained wide experience on governance-related issues and also policy dialogue on specific sector issues such as human rights, small enterprise promotion, microcredit, micro-leasing, water ethics, etc. He's been in charge of the evaluation of development strategies and now retired officially. He is not retired in his actions because he is very much at work in research and in sharing a lot of his experience and a lot of his current research in the domain of political ethics, systems, and governance. He has been a network member of Globe Ethics for some time now. He's one of our experts, and he also has publications with us, which are downloadable for free, as my colleague Herbert mentioned. So without further ado, may I hand over the floor to Ambassador Benoit Girardin to present his paper on global contemporary challenges to ethics and higher education institutions. Over to you. You need to take yourself off of mute. You're still on mute. There you go.
Okay, thank you very much, Christine, and welcome greetings to all of you for this very interesting and challenging discussion. So as you understand, my main, let us say, reflections would be at the limit of ethics and politics, policies. And I would just like to draw your attention on some, let us say, assessments that we can make today of 3 main, let us say, challenges we are facing in the world. The first is climate change. And what is impressive about the climate change that has been, let us say, documented as of the 70s, that is the part and the importance of denial. A lot of people still deny the reality of the climate change. Some people deny the human responsibility and say this is just a physical change like in the past. So denying the human responsibility, and there is a kind of a banalization of let us say, the urgency and the necessity to dramatic changes. So we, let us say, the climate change today reveals the high level of resistance to changes in societies. And of course, I feel it is a challenge in ethical terms and a challenge also for higher education institutions. The second big challenge that we were facing and still are facing today is the COVID pandemic. And as I understand, after having, let us say, studied a lot of research and fact searching in different countries, what is striking is that the silo approach has completely failed. I mean by silo approach, a separation of health sciences, health-related sciences, physical sciences, human sciences, social sciences. If you consider that in many countries, part of the treatment against the pandemic was based on a separation between physical health, mental health, and social health. And it is just after perhaps 1 or even 2 years that we realized that we cannot separate these different silos and that we have to work on exchanges between the silos. And we have seen also in many countries that dilemma, political dilemma between health and economics, between health and society, societal life generations, were in dire need of an ethical reference framework. So in a sense, the COVID has helped ethics to make a comeback for many people who realize that they cannot just handle this kind of situation only with technological or economical considerations. The last challenge that we are facing nowadays is the Russian assault on Ukraine. And here, what has struck me is not only a diverging narratives between Ukrainian government and Russian government, but the Russian narrative is just an inversion of the Ukrainian narrative. That means Russia is depicting itself as a victim who was threatened, regardless of how many casualties and destructions they are causing. So these basically require from higher education institution, I would say, an approach at 3 levels, which I would just now try to discuss and deepen. The first is about the substance. We used to see truth as a possession or as an object, whereas we should see truth as a process and a debt. We are owing, all of us are owing to truth and not possessing truth. The second element of that substantial change that is needed is to accept multi-subjectivity instead of objectivity. The German philosopher Edmund Husserl was saying objectivity does not exist. Subjectivity is part of the game, but what we can reach is multi-subjectivity. That means a common sharing of different perspectives, different narratives, and different interpretation. And of course, we all know that facts are facts, but interpretations is badly needed in scientific culture. And then for bridging between these different perspectives, we need a platform for bridging. And one science cannot pretend to be the platform because they lack of comprehensive tools. I feel that only an ethical referential can play that role of a platform. Then we need to foster strongly a debate culture. And this is what I tried to do when I was vice chancellor of a private university in Rwanda, once I was retired from the diplomatic service of my country. Debate culture is essential. To see ethics in terms of tennis as a chair referee, that means trying to remind the rule of the game and trying to check to what extent rules are respected. And then, as it was clearly said, emotions acknowledged. This may be the feminine part of all of us, but I feel we cannot just live in higher education institution only with half of our brain. Now we need managerial changes to boost interdisciplinarity through innovative methodologies and bridging between domains, through making kind of a double checking of any statement made by one discipline and a double checking based on ethics, that means on societal consequences of those statements. Then to try to boost the work of memory, all of us know that a part of the political problems today are due to an absence of acknowledgement of past, of legacies of violence, of domination, of colonialism. And I think the work of memory is a key element in terms that should be fostered by a higher education institution. And then last, I feel that higher education institutions should try to develop new skills and new competencies and expertise. One is to boost the job and the profession of debate moderator. You do not need only just to listen to each side, but to moderate a debate is a job. Then to develop communication to rulers. High-level institutions sometimes are shy or do not speak the terms, take the terms that can impress rulers and can document rulers and the public at large. So transforming collective psyche and community imagination into something different, devising artificial intelligence tools also to trace denials of reality, fake news, and conspiracy theories. Then to boost and to train ethical influencers on social networks, and then using games and theater tools able to welcome emotions and to make that work of memory. Thank you for your kind attention.
Thank you very much, Benoit Girardin. We see that you're addressing the scope of the complex issues we're facing with some very specific advice and findings. So we look forward to following up with you on these proposals. I now have the pleasure of introducing the next speaker of the day, Mr. James Coder. He is going to present a paper entitled Decommoditization of Education, a Call to Action for a Solvable Crisis. So we can see some links with the previous speaker in that we are looking at solutions. Mr. James Coder lives in North Carolina in the United States, and interestingly lived in China at the age of 15 and learned Chinese fluently that year. He is currently an online educator who has developed a method of teaching, writing, and programming, which emphasizes long-term working memory, and has founded Raitanoia Education and Media. His style of teaching emphasizes the good, the true, and the beautiful as values. We welcome to the floor, James Coder.
Thanks so much, Christine. How is my microphone sounding?
It sounds good.
Excellent. I must thank Globe Ethics profusely for its boldness and incisiveness in bringing this topic to the fore in its call for papers on knowledge societies. I quote, "Collecting and converting scientific information into digitized commodities and making it available through the internet does not automatically create knowledge societies." You are asking one of the most essential questions needed for helping our poor planet out of one of its deepest ruts. For this issue lies at the ground of why, for all of our talk of ideas like racism and misogyny, so little seems to actually get traction, improve concrete conditions, or go anywhere. Just a moment, slide. In 2011, Aaron and Ruscombe published results of one of the most extensive studies of actual educational results to date, involving 2,300 students in 24 American higher educational institutions. Let's see. A whopping 45% hadn't learned any measurable thinking or learning skills in 2 long years. Those who had learned something, it was a rather small something in most cases. Even worse, in the following decade, there has been relatively little discussion or follow-up. No significant rebuttals have been made, and I have seen little social discussion. In 2017, The Guardian published an article entitled "Facing Poverty, Academics Turn to Sex Work and Sleeping in Cars." Why, on this issue of the commoditization of education, which is basically changes it make when it's bought and sold and put on the market or thought of as a market, why are educators so complacent with regard to this issue? Do they not care about students and learning? This is the leading question of this talk. I speak from an American context, but my experience indicates that these issues are definitely not isolated to the American scene. I have discovered a few cognitive bottlenecks which stymie the connection between commoditization and commodification, which probably kept educators and scholars alike from making the necessary connections between the two, which is probably why almost everyone feebly looks at the money issues. So it's not that educators don't care. It seems mostly to be a lack of awareness. And the good news is, this is an addressable issue. If the issues were educators not caring, there would be little we could do about it. It's an awareness issue is tremendously good news. And it means this is a problem that can be solved. What are we missing? about the commodification of education and ideas. One element is the lack of understanding that commodification and commoditization are working hand in hand. We all know what commodities are, things that get traded on markets, grain, steel, even frozen orange juice. Commoditization is a process of things becoming measurable and tradable in a marketplace. But commodification is how things have to be changed by packaging or tokenizing them in order to become part of a system of an economy of commodities, and how they further are changed by various market forces. Academics are going all out in talking about the money consequences of commoditization, while edutainment transforms the demand part of commoditization of education. And other unspoken rules of ethos also change our very ideas and metrics of what education and ideas are. We hear more and more that education has to be fun, and of students who can't learn because they can't maintain focus. But few of us are asking whether we're applying Vygotsky's notion of educational scaffolding, or if we are setting the student up for fun addiction. The good news is that awareness of commoditization and the different types of economies can be powerful motivating factors for all involved in the economy of education to resist the forces of the commoditization of ideas and to make something like a true knowledge society possible, or even a reality. That this problem has to do with a lack of awareness rather than unmotivated educators means we can solve this, and that action is urgently necessary. And frankly, if educators do not, chances are students will, to our shame and loss of reputation as educators. We can thank our lucky stars that students did not pick up on it first all these long decades. For the sake of our very students, we wish for the position of educator to be respected and heard. And here is the call to action. This takes serious cooperation. Results from other schools who have initiated similar initiatives are golden and can be used to deal with the inevitable pressure from uninformed people. Credibility accrues not only from local results, but with results which have been confirmed from other schools as well. And finally, there's also the significant work of consensus building amongst educators. I was impressed with the last Globe Ethics Partners Conference in India, where I presented, and amazed at the utterly important work done by the East Africa GlobeEthics.net partnership for the sake of transparency and anti-corruption in church and state. Great listening, thinking, and strategizing will be necessary if we are to save education from the forces we now see plaguing so much of America. The Globe Ethics partnerships thus mean a great deal to me, and I would especially appreciate their participation in this endeavor. And as a participant in this Congress, dear listener, this means you. Educators and institutions can no longer afford complacency on this issue, and realistically have no choice but to study commodification, expose it, and fight against it, or our educational institutions will become even more effete at transforming the hearts and minds of those dear young people who have vulnerably offered to us for formation one of the most critical things to any human soul. It's education. It is time to start teaching them effectively, rather than inoculating them with the mere illusion of learning. Their souls, ours, and our whole society is at stake. If this call to action moves you, please contact James Coder, JMCODER, @gmail.com. Progress is already being made with a small incubation group, but we very likely need your help, or perhaps we can help you. Or simply reach out to me to let me know what you think. Thank you so very much.
Thank you very much, James Coder, for your provocative and hopeful proposal and presentation. We now move to some concluding remarks to wrap up day one of this conference. We have another reactor, which will help us to, again, synthesize what we've been hearing. So please, to the floor, Ms. Ali. And James, you can take down your PowerPoint.
Yes.
Okay. The Director for Curriculum and Planning and one of Internationalization and ASEAN Integration Chair of Cebu Technological University, Professor BJ Bolivar, is here for the reactor's remarks. May I welcome and hand over the time to Professor Bolivar.
Yes, good evening. Good evening to Ali. It's nighttime here in the Philippines, and a wonderful day to all the participating institutions coming from India, Argentina, Switzerland, Portugal, and of course the Philippines. I'm sorry if I've missed a particular country. So wonderful. It has been wonderful hearing from the very brilliant speakers in this conference. So this is going to be a very quick reaction on the different presentations given tonight. It started as a very eye-opening, with a very eye-opening note, bringing the focus towards the importance of considering sustainability in education planning in the different countries. I'm thinking of the Philippine context specifically because that's where I come from. And in the Philippine context, we have religious education, we have the humanities, we have literature, but I feel that there is never enough focus on the need to emphasize ethics and the direction towards a knowledge society or a knowledge community. So what caught me, or what really caught my attention at first, is the 3 W's of Dr. Stuckelberger. I'm sorry if I wouldn't say them right. We have Wissen, Weisheit, Werte, knowledge, wisdom, and values. And I think these are key terms to constantly consider when we look at our curriculum and when we think of translating our curriculum directions to instruction so that they would really get to our students, which are the receiving end of our directives as academics and as educators. So very wonderful speech, very wonderful talks coming from the different speakers. Let me just point out the very interesting talk on introducing feeling in a thinking curriculum. This caught me a lot, especially with the key terms, feeling in thinking, because we are taught and we are constantly teaching our students to think critically, and we seldom put into consideration the feeling part of it. I saw one very significant comment coming from the chat boxes, and that's coming from a colleague actually. Dr. Sheila Romulo emphasized the need to assert the role of liberal arts in education as a whole, so that we can really consider, we can really put into foreground the ethical part of our formation of our students. Well, I think there is something about the liberal arts that allows us to really connect with the affective part of our students, or to really tap into the affective capacities of our students. I'm not saying that non-liberal arts courses or non-liberal arts programs should be put in the sidelines. What I'm saying is that there should be a constant dialogue between between the various disciplines. And that leads us to one very important concept mentioned earlier by one of the speakers, the notion of interdisciplinarity. So when we design lessons, when we try to connect with our students, we have to consider that the disciplines we are teaching has to always come in contact with other disciplines, because what we want to produce are actually students who, what I have learned from all your presentations, what we want to produce now are students who are capable not only of thinking, but also of feeling. So these are students who are able to integrate, who are able to move beyond just knowledge, but also to go or transcend towards wisdom. These are such big words, but there were strategies mentioned earlier that would make such the vision of global ethics feasible. There was a mention of moral education and cultivation of ritual, for instance, which is a very interesting point, because in the Philippines, the formative education would typically include the saying of a prayer at the beginning of a class. But there was also an interesting question earlier about how about non-sectarian ways of addressing of building ethical values among students. And of course, we can put in other ways of involving the students' ability to think and value, not only think, but also value. Now, here are some important points that are worth mentioning in shaping a new economic paradigm through Asian wisdom traditions in the wake of wars. There was a mention of very important concepts, in reference to the, I hope I got this right, in reference to the manifesto, the Macau Manifesto on the, let me pull out my notes, because I took a lot of notes from this conference because it was a very enlightening one and I learned a lot from it. There was an emphasis on the need to really consider a new framework in looking at economic education, because there has been an ongoing dichotomy between education, economics, or the global economies, or global capitalism for that matter, and morality or moral education. And in that framework, we are given the idea that we could actually break that dichotomy and actually allow these two things to come into contact with each other, to come into dialogue with each other. So another very concrete example was delivered earlier by Dr. Haka of Cebu Technological University, when she talked about one of the ground experiences, the ground realities of our student journalists who go through a lot during in the wake of the pandemic. So their experiences are preventing them from becoming ethical and good journalists. So it's like in journalism, there are beacons that they have to follow, but they just couldn't follow it because of the circumstances. It's like a call to action to us teachers or educators, academics, policymakers, to really look into what's happening on the ground. And sometimes we fail to look at that. We fail to locate people within their own realities. And from the perspective of an educator, I found the need to constantly take a peek into what's happening on the ground. And if I could find if we could find a methodology to really look at it, like such as research or constant dialogue, then we could at least address these limitations. We could address these gaps as early as possible. Well, another very important point delivered earlier, very worth discussing, of course, is the foregrounding of the need for interpretation and the fostering of a debate culture in society, specifically in the educational setup. Well, a very wonderful point there, considering this age of the digital media, when it's difficult, very difficult nowadays to really curate the dialogues going on in in the digital world. So you see a lot of people expressing their points, but it's really difficult to at least referee. And sometimes you would look at the digital media and say, okay, I have a lot to do as an educator. I have a lot to do to do as a policymaker, because I just couldn't referee all these. And then the one very important keyword that got into me is ethics being a good referee, But how do we do that? Probably translation into when we translate that into direct instruction, we could look into how we could come up with ways to referee dialogues or referee debates within the setting of education or organizations with ethics in mind or ethical considerations in mind. And yes, I believe that we should be imparting that to our students so that our educational systems will constantly be sustainable. It would constantly it would grow into knowledge communities, into genuine knowledge communities. So finally, I would like to bring up another significant point on the looking into education as commodity, which is actually a problem in our midst, not only in the first world context, not only in the United States from the perspective of our speaker earlier, but also from the third world context or the developing countries perspective. We constantly try to market our programs. So here are some keywords that might catch your attention. We constantly try to market our programs so that they become marketable to the public. And, maybe this is a perspective that has gotten to us in general, because we want to really, we really want to prime education as a product that we can deliver to society or we can deliver to a market. And when we do that, what we do in the process is that we also prime our students to become products as well. And in this priming of our students to becoming mere products, we tend to take away their sense of agency. It's like a process of dehumanization. So I think what is really needed here is a big shift of perspective, not to look at education as a commodity, but to look at education as a possible way of building sustainable communities or a sustainable knowledge community. Very big vision, but I trust that with people like, the people behind Globe Ethics and the wonderful speakers that I've heard of earlier, this can become feasible. There can be policies laid out, there can be plans laid out, and I think there are already works going on to address these issues. So that's it. Thank you very much, and thank you for the time. Ms. Ali, the floor is back to you. Thank you, thank you, Christine, for the opportunity. Yes.
I think it's coming back to me just simply and happily to deliver a word of thanks to you. As everyone may have caught, Cebu Technological University, from which you come, is one of the partners in this conference. And it's been really very helpful and very interesting to hear you catch on to some of the points that caught your attention throughout the day. And so thank you very much for your interesting kind of engagement and reaction to what we've heard today. It helps us all to process and react as we continue. Also, thank you for kind of casting the vision that together we really can make inroads. You're the director for curriculum and planning, so you're in a very strategic position to make a difference in your own university, and then together.
That is true, Christine.
Yes, indeed. And
all of us, actually.
Well, that's it. So there are strategic people around the table here, both presenters and participants. Thank you very much, and back to Rajula to conclude the day one of our conference.
Yeah, thank you, Christine, and thank you, Professor Braje Bolivar. We have come to the closer of the day one of the event. I would like to mention here that today we had participants attending from Mexico, Turkey, Philippines, Cameroon, South Africa, Nigeria, Tanzania, Nairobi, Ireland, Ghana, Holland, Georgia, Myanmar, India. These are the people mentioned their country. I'm sure many other country participants also attended. And I especially thank all the organizers, first of all here, Cebu Technological University, Philippines, Christ University, deemed to be university campus, Delhi NCR, and Globalthics.net India. We have also received support from Globalthics.net Geneva office, and I can see almost all the speakers, they have stayed from the beginning till the end. Professor Christoph, Father Jose Nandikara, Benova, and the paper presenters, Denny. I can see Dr. Amale. She's very busy, but she has remained with us till the end. And I thank Susan, Herbert, and also Maria joining from Argentina, and all the paper presenters, Mithika, Suleka, and Meera ma'am. Yeah, she's also very busy, and Sureka ma'am. Gokul, who has given technical support, James Coder from North Carolina, Rowan amidst her ill health. So my heartfelt thanks goes out to each and every one of you, and special thanks to Christine also in helping us in the moderation. Thank you, and sorry if I have missed any name. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rajula. Thank you, Christine, for coordinating and making it very engaging and helpful. Look forward to tomorrow. And thank you all the participants and dear professors, Beno, Koda, and all others. We look forward to hear from you more. Thank you.
And we have a lot of stories tomorrow also from the speakers and also reactors, paper presenters. Please do not miss it. And it is Indian Standard Time, 2 p.m. We warmly welcome you for tomorrow's session. Thank you. Have a great day, great night, and great evening.